Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Nika Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What if Deku had artificial cyborg quirk? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. At the age of 4, Izuku Midoriya lost his dream. Sorry kid, but it's just not going to happen. The rotund mustachioed doctor's words cut into the green-haired boy like a knife. Izuku Midoriya rocked back and forth on the chair in the doctor's office, a blank look on his face as his mother stared at the man in horror. Are you sure? Inko Midoriya asked her son's doctor. The man nodded solemnly and pulled up an x-ray of her son's foot. When quirks first started popping up around a century ago, one of the first ways that medical professionals found to distinguish quirked and quirkless individuals was the presence or absence of a second pinky toe joint. Quirked individuals lack the joint, having evolved past it, while quirkless ones still possess it. As you can see here, your son has 2 pinky toe joints, meaning the chances of him developing a quirk are below 10%. We can run a blood test to see if he possesses a quirk factor, but quite frankly, I'm not too sure the results will be any different, the man stated. Perchance, what are you and your husband's quirks and what generation are you? Inko held her right hand out and slowly attracted one of her son's toys, a figure of All Might in his Silver Age costume, into her hand. I'm a 4th generation with a quirk that lets me attract any object weighing less than half a kilogram into my hands, and my husband is a 3rd generation with a fire breath quirk. That combination sounds like it should have had a solid 88% chance of creating some kind of pyrokinetic quirk, but it wasn't guaranteed. Recessive genes can do that though, the doctor trailed off. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Maybe the kid can't be a hero, but from what I've seen, he's a pretty smart cookie. Maybe he can do hero analysis or support in the future. RRR. Later that night, a computer screen glowed in a dark room, playing a video. The large, laughing form of All Might could be seen saving people from what looked like the wreck of a burning airplane, booming laughter reassuring the civilians he was rescuing. This is insane. It's only been 5 minutes and he's already rescued 100 people, a reporter shouted, as All Might brought another half-dozen people out of the wreck with him. Have no fear, citizens, hope has arrived, because I am here, the pro shouted, inspiring a wave of cheers from the crowd. Midoriya watched the screen, but there was no joy on his face. Only a blank, despairing stare. Inko entered the room, worried about her son. It was unusual for him to be watching All Might's Japanese debut without cheering loudly at it. Izuku, sweetie. Are you okay? The boy turned around, despair in his blank eyes. Mom. Can I still be an awesome hero? Like All Might? At this point, Inko broke down in tears and started hugging her son. I'm sorry, Izuku. I'm so sorry. The boy continued to stare blankly, but something inside him broke. That day was the day my dream died. RRR. At the age of 7, Izuku Midoriya lost his legs. Come on Deku, growled a fuming Katsuki Bakugo, dragging the younger boy by one arm. I can't believe the old hag made me have to babysit your quirkless but while she and Auntie Inko go shopping for you. But Kaken, it's my birthday. They don't want to spoil any surprises. Midoriya whined in response. If it was possible, this made Bakugo even angrier. Damn it, I know that. Doesn't mean I have to like it though. So we're doing what I want. The arcade's right there, the explosive blonde growled, the sound of coins jingling in his pockets in preparation for what was likely to be a brutal round of pinball. The 2 children were in the atrium of a large mall in the middle of downtown Tatooine Ward, Muzutafu. A large golden fountain sat in the middle of the atrium, sunken slightly into the floor with various stores on all sides. A large skylight let the warm summer sunshine in from above, illuminating the mall's atrium in golden light. You want to go to the arcade on my birthday? That's the best gift ever, Kaken. Midoriya responded innocently as he was dragged along behind the blonde. Bakugo stopped, let go of Midoriya, and turned around, his eye twitching slightly with the knowledge that Midoriya was okay with a plan that was meant to make his birthday SCK. Gah, the blonde groaned, before sighing in resignation and continuing to stomp towards the arcade, Midoriya following behind him under his own power. Then, as they were halfway across the atrium, the skylight shattered, and the screaming started. A flock of a half-dozen or so black-skinned, seemingly eyeless, bat-winged villains with disturbingly large grins burst in through the shattered glass, splitting up and soaring through the air into several stores around the mall. One of them remained hanging on the ceiling next to the broken skylight, and Midoriya could swear it grinned at him and Bakugo. A faint glow began to emanate from the stomach of each of the creatures, rapidly becoming brighter and brighter before each of them burst apart in a loud and destructive explosion. Alarms blared and people screamed as fire spread through the mall and cracks began to form in the building's structure. Bakugo and Midoriya began to race towards the exit, hoping to find their mothers there, but the blonde was too distracted to notice the large piece of concrete falling from above him, having calved off from the ruined ceiling after the one on the roof exploded. Midoriya noticed this and ran towards his friend-slash-bully. "Kaken, look out!" he shouted, tackling Bakugo out of the way just in time. A loud crash could be heard as a cloud of dust was kicked up, obscuring the inside of the ruined building. The mall stopped shaking a few moments later as the last of the structural damage was inflicted, and Bakugo sat up, rubbing his head. "Damn it, Deku, what was that for? I'll kick your butt for dash." The blonde began to curse out the other boy, only for his eyes to widen in horror as the dust cleared. Midoriya lay face down on the floor, bleeding from multiple wounds. Most horrifying, however, was the massive chunk of concrete that his legs were pinned under. Nothing was visible of them from the knees down, other than a large red smear of blood, flesh and bone partially protruding from under the rock. "Deku, why did you save me?" Bakugo questioned aloud in shock, as his mind finally caught up to his body. "Deku. Hold on," he shouted, trying in vain to push the rubble off of Midoriya's body. "Somebody call an ambulance, damn it." Bakugo continued to shout, his voice growing louder and louder until he was shouting himself hoarse while attacking the rock. Resorting to using his quirk, Bakugo began pounding the debris with explosions, but he was only strong enough to create a few scorch marks on the rock, failing to meaningfully damage it. Outside, sirens grew louder and louder as the first medical personnel, police and heroes responded to the scene. Bakugo finally exhausted himself, unable to produce any more explosive sweat and dropping to his knees in front of Midoriya's prone form. In the background, he dimly registered the arrival of some heroes, but was too shell-shocked to react until a rescue hero arrived with emergency medical responders, disintegrating the debris off of Midoriya and strapping him to a gurney to carry him away before tending to Bakugo himself. As he was wrapped in a blanket and carried towards a medical recovery station, Bakugo's mind finally recovered enough to tally the heroes responding. The Space Hero 13 and several rescue heroes he couldn't name off the top of his head were searching out and securing trapped civilians, while a few others such as Air Jet and recently debuted newbie Present Mike were patrolling the edge of the disaster area. Oddly, it seemed like the police were talking to a few other heroes, notable rookie Fat Gum, the number 12 hero Best Jeanist, and Captain Celebrity, who had retired the previous year. Before Bakugo could think too much on the topic, the boy was set down and found himself almost crushed in a hug by his distraught parents. RRR. 2 days later, Midoriya slowly drifted awake to find himself looking up at an unfamiliar ceiling. Where am I? The hospital? Why? He began to wonder, before his memories started to come back. That's right, I pushed Kaken to safety. I hope he's okay. I don't feel too bad right now. A little dizzy, but I think I got hit on the head by some debris. I can't feel my toes though. Maybe it's because I got hit on the head? The boy sat up, stretching his arms and yawning. His mother, sleeping in a chair by his bedside, was stirred awake. "Izuku, you're awake. I was so worried," she cried, crushing her son in a tight hug. "Can't breathe. Mom," the boy gasped, tapping out on his mom's back and causing her to release him, fretting over him again. Before he could say anything, however, a knock sounded at the door, and Inko's eyes widened. "Come in." The door opened, and Izuku's jaw dropped. "Dad." Hisashi Midoriya stepped into the room, a small smile on his face. He was a reasonably tall man, around 184 centimeters or so, with dark, curly hair and freckles just like Izuku's on his face. He wore a pair of blue jeans, which clashed with the white shirt, suit jacket and tie he also had on. Giving a quick kiss to Inko, he ruffled Izuku's hair. "Been a while, Zuzu, hasn't it? You haven't come back since my 5th birthday." Izuku responded. Hisashi chuckled, before his face turned solemn. "Well, I was coming back for your birthday anyway, but when I got the news about what happened, I knew I had to see you as soon as I could." "What happened? You mean those weird villains at the mall?" Izuku asked. Hisashi sighed and shot a glance at Inko, who returned the favor. "So nobody has told you yet," he said. "Those villains that attacked caused significant explosive damage to the Tattooin Department Mall. 13 people died and 65 were injured, including you. You saved Katsuki from possible death like the little hero you are, but you paid a grave price." "A price? How bad was it?" the boy asked. Both Inko and Hisashi looked away sorrowfully, before the older man pulled the covers down off Izuku's body. As the boy looked down, he traced his form down without issue until reaching his legs, which were gone at the knees. His feet and lower legs were no longer there, just 2 stumps where his knees once were. Izuku's eyes widened further and further in shock. "Oh." With that, the boy immediately passed out. Hisashi and Inko looked at each other as the father pulled the bedsheets back up over his son, and said in unison, "We need to talk." Sitting in the hospital cafeteria, the two worried parents talked about their future and what they would need to do. "Inko, I don't know if we can continue living the way we are after this accident," Hisashi said. "I don't want you to work yourself to the bone to balance work and taking care of things while I'm out of town." "I can do it," Inko responded quickly. "No, I don't think you can. And even if you can, I don't want you to go through that kind of stress just because I can't be here," Hisashi said, placing one hand on top of Inko's. "Izuku is going to need you to be there more than you can be with your current commute into Yokohama for your legal work." "Then what do you suggest we do?" Inko asked. "We should move closer to Yokohama," Hisashi said. "Aldera is the cheapest ward in Muzutafu when it comes to housing, but it also has the worst schools and it's hard to get to Tatooine Station, which takes people out of the city towards the Tokyo Metro. Kuruska Ward isn't much pricier than Aldera, but it has better access to transportation and higher education quality. Luckily, I got a pay raise for one of my recent inventions, so we can afford it. Plus, I have some good friends from the support industry there who would be willing to help you take care of Izuku while I'm out of town." Inko sighed, then looked her husband in the eye. "All right. If that's what it takes, then I'm with you. We'll move to Kuruska." RRR. 3 weeks later. "Are you sure you have to do this?" Mitsuki Bakugo asked Inko as Masaru helped Hisashi move boxes into a moving truck. The blonde woman was helping her best friend since middle school pack up all the Midoriya family's belongings for the big move. Inko sighed as she turned to Mitsuki. "We've been over this, Mitsuki-chan. With Izuku's injury, I need to be able to spend more time with him, which means I need to be closer to work." "I know," Mitsuki trailed off. "But that doesn't mean I have to like it." Elsewhere in the apartment, Izuku tucked the last of his All Might merchandise away in a box and passed it to Katsuki. The blonde child had been rather subdued around the greenette for the past few weeks, no doubt still shaken by how close both of them had come to death and the fact that Izuku had sacrificed his legs to save Katsuki's life. That should be the last of it. Izuku. "Serious, you know," she pouted. Midoriya sighed. "Fine. What do you want to ask? How did you lose your legs?" Hatsume asked. Midoriya briefly had a flashback of shock and pain, but wrested control of his body before the trauma could catch up with him. "It was a villain attack on my 7th birthday. Have you heard about the Tatooine Department Mall bombing?" When a wide-eyed Hatsume nodded, he continued. "My legs got crushed under debris pushing a friend out of danger. They had to amputate almost immediately afterwards." "Well, that SCKS," Hatsume stated, slightly shaken even with her usually exuberant attitude. "Do you want me to fix it?" "What?" Midoriya asked, so surprised that he dropped the onigiri he'd been eating. "But how would you dash? Ever heard of prosthetics, Freckles?" Hatsume asked again, reaching into her backpack and pulling out a few pieces of paper. On them were detailed drawings showing a highly complicated design for a pair of prosthetic legs. Midoriya's eyes widened. "Whoa, May. Those don't look like any prosthetics I've ever seen." Hatsume laughed. "Because they're not, you silly gosling. They're a Hatsume Industries model that blows all current competition out of the water." Pointing at the three-toed design of the sole, she continued. "Lifelike articulation, pressure sensitivity to simulate the sensation of touch, and so much more. All we have to do is hook these babies up to your brain and you'll be walking in no time." Midoriya squinted at the drawings for a few moments, then ran his fingers through his hair. "You say that like it's easy," he murmured. "But it is," Hatsume stated cheerily. "I'm smart, you're smart, and together we're double smart. This should be a cinch." "Let's hope so," Midoriya responded without too much energy, but internally he was bursting with joy. "Oh my god, this is incredible, thank you, my what will die without ya?" RRR. Back in the present? The two schoolchildren finished their work at roughly the same time. "Are you ready, Zuzu?" Hatsume questioned her friend. Midoriya grinned. "I think I got it to work this time," he said, closing a panel over the complex circuitry he'd welded and soldered, then placing the device on his forehead. It resembled a crown of sorts, except instead of spikes it was a plain, halo-like ring with two small discs attached to it that rested on the skin of his forehead. In the back was a control box with two small arms that ran down to two more discs, these pressed to the back of his head. Hatsume placed the two prosthetics on the floor in front of Midoriya. "Okay, leg attaché modules are online. Neural synchronization band test number 14 is a go," she said cheerily, stepping back behind a protective panel. Two green lines on the sides of the headband pulsed slightly with a gentle glow, before its wearer opened his eyes again. "Try to flex your toes," Zuzu Hatsume called out. "Got it," Mei-chan, the boy responded, concentrating hard on feeling for a limb he hadn't had for several years. Feeling a familiar sensation, he concentrated on it, and after a few moments, the 3 simplistic toes on the attachments moved ever so slightly. Yes. It works. Hatsume shouted. Try to go a little further. Oh okay then, Midoriya responded, reaching for the sensation again and trying to strengthen it. This time, however, the legs didn't respond. Ah, Mei-chan, we may have a problem he began, just before the lights on the headband grew more and more intense and shifted from green to red. I've got the can. Hatsume shouted, grabbing what looked like a reinforced garbage can from off the floor and holding it in front of Midoriya as he lifted the band off his head and placed it inside the receptacle. Hatsume rushed over to a corner, set the can down, and both she and Midoriya covered their ears. A few seconds later, a muffled boom could be heard in the room, followed by the can emitting a light puff of smoke. The greenette sighed and wheeled himself over to the specially designed explosive invention neutralization vessel, affectionately nicknamed the can, and opened it. The scorched remains of his headband were visible inside. Midoriya groaned. It failed again, Mei. It took a little longer to overload this time, but it still blew up. Hatsume inspected the remains. It looks like the liquid nitrogen coolant isn't capable of regulating the temperature of the resonance scanner enough. Or maybe we didn't have it under enough pressure, she stated. Wheeling over to a whiteboard, the greenette noted these observations down. So we need a scanner conduit containing a magnetic resonance system that has somehow been printed in a single solid piece, and it needs a better coolant, like superfluid helium, he said, before scratching his head. Where would we even get that? I don't know, I don't know, Mei sighed. For the first time in her inventing career, the Pinkette was forced to admit defeat and place one of her babies on the back burner. How disappointing, she thought, gathering the legs in a box and shoving it in one corner of the room with all the earlier prototypes. RRR. For months later, after a long day at school, the green-haired boy lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling. It's hot, he muttered, the summer heat making his day distinctly uncomfortable. Worse, it was his birthday, and Mei had gone completely off the radar for the past several days. I don't know what she's planning, but knowing her, it cannot be good. A loud noise at the door into their apartment pulled him out of his reverie. I should probably go figure out what that is, he muttered, wheeling himself out of his room and around the corner to open the door. The second he did, Hatsume grabbed his wrist and pulled him out of the room, the wheelchair careening crazily behind her as she ran towards the elevator. Inko looked out the door behind them and shook her head slightly in amusement. And Mei-chan? Where are we going? Midoriya asked, still trying to get enough oxygen after his abrupt acceleration at the hands of Mei Hatsume. The duo stopped at the garage of the Hatsume family's home. Although he didn't know it when they had first met several years ago, Midoriya had since learned that Mei's parents, Tsugu and Akira Hatsume, were friends of his dad. Hisashi had met the duo at iExpo a few years before either of their children were born. Tsugu's quirk was a mutation type called acetylene fingers, which gave her little retractable nozzles on her fingertips that allowed her to create a small acetylene flame. In fact, her quirk was what the acetylene microtorch glove that the two children had invented was based on. Akira, in contrast, had the same zoom quirk as his daughter, allowing him to zoom in on anything he was looking directly at. He had honed his ability to the point where he could see the basic molecular structure of anything he looked at closely enough. He described his first time seeing a molecule with his naked eyes as being a religious experience of sorts. The duo had worked at Island starting at around the same time as Hisashi, although they got somewhat more time off than he did. Still, they weren't home too often as of late, which meant that Mei practically lived with Inko and Izuku half the time. Hatsume wheeled Midoriya right up to their main workbench and opened a small, crinkled letter that looked like it had ramen stains on one corner. Look at this, Zuzu, she shouted, smoothing the letter out to show the writing on it. To Mei Hatsume, we here at the Japanese National Youth Science Board would like to congratulate you on your first-place victory in the 45th National Youth Invention Competition. The judges considered your invention revolutionary, and several support companies will no doubt contact you in the coming weeks. Enclosed is a first-place certificate signed by the judges, the grand prize award of 1,500,000 yen, and an invitation to iExpo this year. Best regards, Rikiya Yatsubashi, Chairman of the JNYSB, CEO of the Detnerat Corporation. Mei-chan. What did you do? Midoriya asked in a resigned tone. I entered one of the early prototypes of your new legs into the competition. Apparently my babies were a big hit, the Pinkette responded, already sounding like she was on a disturbing amount of caffeine. Not only that, but take a look at this. The girl smoothed out another letter and displayed it to her friend. Dear Miss Hatsume, Congratulations on your victory in this year's National Youth Invention Competition. As one of the judges, I am firmly of the opinion that the technology of your prosthetic leg entry has the potential to revolutionize the entire field of prosthetics, and I would like to extend the first business offer to you. If you are interested in negotiations, please return the enclosed envelope with a statement of interest and name your price. I will be back in contact as soon as possible. Sincerely, Ringo Yaoyorozu, Chairman, Yaoyorozu Group. Midoriya gawked as he took in the other offers from support companies scattered all across the table. This is incredible. Did you accept any of them? He asked. Yep, I already contacted the Yaoyorozu Group about licensing my babies a week ago. Hatsume responded cheerily, shoveling the other offers, from Detonarat to Yggdrasil to an odd-looking one marked with just a black X, into a trash can. Cool. When are they coming? Midoriya asked. Hatsume looked at the clock. Probably within the next 5 minutes, she stated nonchalantly, and Midoriya almost flipped out. What? May, we have to clean this place up a little. You need to take a shower. We need to be ready. These people are some of the wealthiest in Japan, and they can utterly ruin us if we don't make a good impression. He began, only to be interrupted by a knock at the door. As Midoriya's soul left his body and his heart fell through the floor, Hatsume happily skipped over to the door and opened it. Come in, Yaoyorozu-san, we have babies to discuss, she almost cackled, and Midoriya's emotional state continued to deteriorate. In stepped a reasonably tall dark-haired man wearing a white two-piece suit with a dark shirt and sky-blue necktie. His wealth wasn't blatantly obvious from his clothes, but it was obvious by his confident posture and the two dark-suited, sunglasses-wearing bodyguards flanking him. It's a pleasure to meet you, Hatsume-san, the man responded. Stepping to one side, Ringo Yaoyorozu revealed his accompaniment for this deal, a young girl around Hatsume and Midoriya's age, with dark hair similar to the elder man's hair styled up in a ponytail. She instinctively tried to hide behind him again, but a gentle hand was placed on her shoulder. Hatsume-san, this is my daughter Momo. I brought her along in hopes of introducing her to the family business, and hopefully meeting a few other children her age. And nice to meet you, the younger Yaoyorozu responded, bowing to the other two children. Pleased to meet you too, Momo-san. Now then, let's get to business. Hatsume responded, sitting down at the table across from the elder Yaoyorozu. As the businessman and the inventor began their haggling, and Hatsume could drive a hard bargain, Midoriya had learned this from personal experience, the greenette watched the younger Yaoyorozu at the table. She seemed nervous, and every now and then, a little nesting doll would pop out of her skin, a case of stress-related quirk activation. I wonder what her quirk is. Can she summon things from a distance? The boy wondered, his hands itching to pull out his notebook and begin taking notes. 40%. Hatsume stated, referring to royalties from the patent for the prosthetic legs. Even for a company as large and financially successful as ours, that's a steep price. 20%, Ringo responded, jotting something on a piece of paper. I'd accept 20% for my earliest prototypes, like this one, but not for my later babies, Hatsume argued, pulling a somewhat more rudimentary prosthetic off of a nearby shelf, one that would still embarrass the prosthetics sold for pro heroes by the most successful companies. The elder Yaoyorozu grimaced internally. This kid is no pushover, he noted, before speaking up again. Perhaps this can be settled through a more nuanced agreement. Are there any specialty materials you need for further inventions? Hatsume was about to reject the offer, but then noticed Midoriya writing in his notebook. Looking at the loose-hanging cloth of his pants below his knees, her eyes widened slightly. Actually, there is, she said, turning to another shelf and grabbing a set of blueprints and unfurling them for the businessman to see. Can you create this for us? As the elder Yaoyorozu's eyes scanned the blueprints, they grew wider and wider. A resonant imaging device wrapped in graphene and suspended in a tungsten steel ring filled with superfluid helium? Why would you need something so incredibly difficult to create? He wondered aloud. Hatsume pointed first to the prosthetic legs. On a shelf, then to Midoriya's stumps. Yaoyorozu's eyes widened, before he breathed out an almost awestruck, "You're trying to help him walk again?" When Hatsume nodded, a small smile crossed his face. "What sort of deal would you agree to if we could supply something like that?" The pinkette grinned. "I'm glad you asked. I'd agree to 21% and the device in exchange for you holding exclusive license to this patent and further contact from us about new babies," she replied. "Well, the man murmured under his breath. "Hatsume-san, I believe we've come to an understanding. 21% and the device it is." After 2 minutes of drawing up the contract, it turned out that the Yaoyorozu Group had created an independent inventor contract template for use with a variety of up-and-coming talents. Both he and the young inventor signed their names on the contract, one of the guards was also a licensed notary who could verify the legality of the document with his own signature. "It's been a pleasure doing business with you, Hatsume-san," the elder Yaoyorozu said. "Now let's see about that device. Momo, can you create this for us?" he asked, handing the blueprints to his daughter. "Create?" asked Midoriya. "That's right. Momo's quirk is called Creation, and it allows her to disassemble the molecules in her body's lipids and reassemble them into anything she knows," the atomic structure of the older man stated. This set the Greenette's mind into overdrive. What an incredible quirk! Is there an element of nuclear fusion involved? What are her limits? Is she limited to compounds within a certain range of complexity? What kind of mutations does she have to enable this dash? He started muttering, only for the elder Yaoyorozu to laugh. "You must be a quirk nerd, asking questions like that. I know another quirk nerd who mutters just like that. What's your name, kid?" "Izuku Midoriya, sir," the Greenette responded. "What a surprise. You must be Hisashi's kid, you certainly act just like him." Ringo laughed. "You know my dad?" the boy asked. "Do I? He's my eldest son's direct superior at Island. I'm going to have to give him a hard time for never introducing us to his family, even after bragging about them all the time. He's always telling us what a smart cookie his son is," the elder Yaoyorozu replied, causing the Greenette to blush. "I think I can do this," Momo murmured, catching everyone's attention. Holding one arm in front of her, the girl concentrated, and as the others watched, a shimmering blue light heralded the slow creation of a silvery metal ring about as wide as Midoriya's head. After a minute and a half of delicate creation, the item was finished, and the raven-haired girl set the device in the workbench before almost falling over in exhaustion, her father quickly catching her and setting her on the couch that was tucked in the corner of the workshop. "It looks like she has limits based on her fat reserves. Creating too much or too complicated a device can tire her out," Midoriya noted. Ringo nodded. "Exactly right, kid. To answer a few of your earlier questions, the answers are yes, classified and classified. She was born with a special subcutaneous membrane that facilitates nuclear fusion while protecting her body from radiation. As a result, her radiation resistance is above that of some people with radiation quirks." "Zuzu, do you still have the control module you rebuilt after Test 14? Hatsume chattered to her friend as she began activating the prosthetic legs that had gathered dust on a shelf for the past 4 months. "Oh, all right. I almost forgot." Midoriya responded, wheeling over to his side of the workshop, a much more organized space than Hatsume's side. Reaching into a drawer, he pulled out an envelope and produced a much thinner band with 3 electrode pads and a small box of circuits on the backside. Wheeling over to the ring that Momo had created, one of the most unbelievably complex devices the boy had ever seen, he slotted it into place on the band's exterior, before powering the device up. Unlike the prosthetic legs, the neural synchronization band was designed to absorb his own bioelectricity and power itself that way, so the device would remain on for as long as he wore it. Placing the ring on his head like a crown, Midoriya felt the electrode pads click into place, 2 on his forehead, and 1 on the nape of his neck. "Neural synchronization band test number 15 is a go!" Hatsume cheered, stepping behind the bulletproof glass with the Yaoyorozu and their guards. Once again, Midoriya reached for the feeling of his toes. After confirming that he could feel them, he wiggled them several times. The legs responded instantly. He mentally gripped the feeling of well, feeling his lower limbs and expanded that sensation into his legs, the feeling of cold, numb static that had plagued him for the past 3 years slowly vanishing and being replaced with a sense of cool relief. He tensed the muscles of his imaginary legs, and heard the robotic ones respond in kind. This time, the boy couldn't stop himself from crying, breaking down into happy tears. Hatsume ran out from behind the glass and gripped him in a hug. "So do you like your present, Zuzu?" she asked. "This is the best birthday present I could have asked for, Mei-chan," the Greenette responded, wrapping his arms around his friend. Just as Momo began to recover from using her quirk for such a complicated task, a pink blur grabbed her in a hug. "Thank you, Momo-san." Hatsume cried cheerfully. "You've helped give Zuzu his dreams back." Seeing the expressions of joy on the faces of the other 2 children caused a warm feeling to bubble up inside Momo, slowly melting away the self-doubt that had already encased her heart. Is this what it feels like to be proud?" she wondered to herself, before responding to Mei. "Why, you're welcome, Hatsume-san." Letting go of the ravinette, Hatsume grinned at her. "Please, call me Mei, I have a feeling we're going to be very good friends," she chirped, before turning to the elder Yaoyorozu. "Thank you for doing business with Hatsume Industries, Yaoyorozu-san. Since it's Zuzu's birthday, would you like some cake?" Ringo laughed slightly. "I wish I could stay for cake and meet Inko-san, but I regret that I'm a very busy man." Still, he murmured, before getting an idea and gesturing to one of the guards. Ishikawa, I want you to accompany Hatsume-san, Midoriya-kun and Momo to the Midoriya residence. Call me when they're done, it'll be a good lesson for Momo on creating professional connections. The guard nodded and stayed behind as his partner escorted the elder Yaoyorozu out of the building. And perhaps it will help my daughter too, she needs to make more friends. Ringo thought to himself as he walked out of the workshop. RRR. 3 weeks later. He's waking up, Yaoyorozu-san, were the first words Izuku could hear as he woke up, his vision slowly clearing as blurry shapes and colors coalesced into images and the fog lifted off of his mind. Thank you, Doctor, we'll take it from here, responded the Yaoyorozu patriarch's voice, as the green-haired child slowly began to sit up in the bed. As he did so, the group slowly came into view: Momo, Ringo, Mei, his mother, his father, an almost bald doctor who appeared to be European, and the bodyguard Ishikawa, who had a simple but effective quirk that let him coat his skin with a granite-like substance that could easily deflect bullets. It worked, the greenette boy asked, slowly pulling down the covers and pulling up his medical gown. At the end of his stumps, instead of round nubs of flesh, there were now 2 metallic plates, each about 5 centimeters thick, with a longer peg-like attachment sticking out of each one. It worked, Zuzu. Now you should be able to attach the prosthetics directly to your legs and control them with the headband, Mei responded. I wish we could have figured out how to attach the prosthetic directly to the nerves in your legs so that we could bypass the need for the headband, but even the brightest minds in medicine and cybernetics back on Island haven't gotten anywhere close, Hisashi added. It's fine, Izuku said, a smile spreading across his face. Mei-chan, do you have them dash? He started, only to be cut off by the pinkette plopping both the prosthetics down on the bed next to him. The greenette boy slid the hole on the top of each prosthetic across the corresponding peg on each leg, before twisting them inwards to lock them on. Green lines glowed and lit up both the legs and the adapters as Izuku slid the headband on. Swinging his legs over the edge of the bed, the greenette stepped onto the floor before anyone could stop him. And felt his legs give out immediately, his father rushing over just in time to catch him. Oops. I think I forgot how to walk, the greenette laughed, to the exasperation of everyone else in the room. It's been 3 years, of course you've forgotten how to walk, they all chorused mentally. Within a day, the green-haired boy was scheduled for regular physical therapy appointments to help him learn to move his legs again. After a month and a half, he graduated from the wheelchair to a pair of crutches, and just 4 months after that, he took the first steps on his own since the accident 3.5 years earlier. At the age of 10, Izuku Midoriya learned to walk again. RRR. 2.5 years later, Aldera Ward, Mizutofu, Japan. Katsuki Bakugo was having a pretty goddamn good day, in his own personal opinion. His homework for the next week was done, not that it was exactly challenging. He wasn't top of his class for nothing, his mother had been nagging him less than usual, and he'd found out about an amusement park that would be holding its grand opening in just a week. It helped that Aldera Middle School had SCKED less ever since an incident a year earlier, where the Mizutofu Municipal Police Department had conducted a sting operation that had resulted in 14 teachers and staff being arrested for quirk discrimination charges. One of them had been his homeroom teacher, who had always rubbed him the wrong way for some reason, preaching about how Bakugo should be able to exercise his abilities to the greatest extent possible. The explosive blonde had learned his lesson about treading on those weaker than him after his friendship with Deku, no, Izuku. I wonder how that DMN nerd is doing. Bakugo wondered to himself, finishing a can of spicy cherry soda and tossing it in a nearby recycling bin as he made his way home. As if the universe was toying with him for some reason, an answer came to his question almost immediately, as a voice behind him cut through his reverie. Kaken. Whirling around in surprise, Bakugo was stunned by the sight that greeted him. At the other end of the street he'd been traversing stood his old friend. Time, and PBRTY, had been fairly kind to the greenette, as he'd grown fairly significantly since they'd last seen each other, though that was to be expected, since it had been almost 6 years. And wait, standing? Bakugo's eyes traveled down from his old friend's head, past the gym clothes he was wearing, to his legs. Instead of stumps where the exercise shorts ended, 2 sleek steely gray prosthetics with glowing green lines supported the preteen's weight. Izuku? What the F, he began, before stopping himself. No, screw it, you can explain at my house, it's been 5 years since we last hung out. Come on. The blonde turned and continued walking towards his house, gesturing for Midoriya to follow him. RRR. A week later, after significant media hype, Endoa Amusements opened its gates to the public for the first time. And there, in the line to get in, stood 4 preteens that we're quite familiar with at this point. So, Izuku, are you gonna introduce me to these extras you brought along or not? Bakugo growled at his old friend. Oh, right. Katsuki Bakugo, these are my friends Mei Hatsume and Momo Yaoyorozu, the Greenette replied, gesturing to each of his companions. And nice to meet you, the Ravenette responded, bowing slightly. 2 years of friendship with the would-be Iron Man and the mad inventress had slowly brought her out of her shell, although she could still be shy at some moments. Yaoyorozu, eh? So you're a rich kid? Bakugo responded bluntly. Midoriya raised his right hand and bopped his friend on the forehead. Ow! The hell was that for? You can't just say that, Kaken, Midoriya chided. But I can. I have lungs, vocal cords, and a mouth, the explosive blonde snarked back. Midoriya facepalmed. Well, obviously you're physically capable of saying it, but from a societal standpoint, it's pretty rude. Honestly? F society's expectations, nerd, Bakugo responded. If we all conformed to that bullshit, you'd still be in a wheelchair. Oh, I like this one. Hatsume laughed. Mei Hatsume, future #1 support inventor and CEO of Hatsume Industries. Pleasure to meet you, Blasty. I can't make an informed decision just yet, Crazy Eyes, but we're either going to be the best of friends or we're going to absolutely hate each other, Bakugo responded. I'd rather it be the former, Blasty. But enough of that, tell me about yourself. What can you do? What's your quirk? Hatsume asked excitedly. Holding one hand out in front of him, Bakugo detonated a few tiny beads of sweat to produce a couple little sparks. Mine is called Explosion. It's pretty DMN self-explanatory. Hatsume lifted her sunglasses up and let her eyes zoom in on the blonde's palm. So you sweat something adjacent to nitroglycerin and detonate it at will with little bioelectrical sparks emitted from special pores in your hands. Fascinating, she said. Bakugo blinked a couple times in surprise. DMN, you're good. What about you, Ponytail? A nesting doll shimmered into existence from the palm of her hand, one with blonde hair and red eyes. My quirk is creation, and it lets me convert the molecules in my body fat into any item I know the molecular structure of. This time, Bakugo's eyes did bug out as he took the doll and shoved it in his pocket. That's pretty incredible, Ponytail, he said, shooting Midoriya a look that clearly said, I know what this quirk is capable of, and it's DMN terrifying. Midoriya returned with a look that seemingly said, oh, you have no idea. Yaoyorozu blushed at the praise. Thank you, she murmured. Look alive, we're at the head of the line now, Hatsume alerted the rest of the group as they reached the gate, proffering their tickets to the gateman. Apparently the Yaoyorozu group had financed a significant portion of the construction, and as a result, tickets were given by the park authority to all 4 members of the family, Ringo, Momo's father, Sakura, Momo's mother, Ichigo, Momo's elder half-brother from Ringo's previous marriage to his ex-wife, Ume, and Momo herself. The quartet found themselves quickly ushered through the gates and into the park. I want to go on that one, Bakugo said, immediately pointing at a giant, menacing roller coaster with the ominous name, Death Coaster 9000. Of course you do, Midoriya muttered, facepalming as he pointed to the Ferris wheel. How about we start there instead? RRR. They did indeed end up riding the Death Coaster, although not after riding the Ferris wheel, a smaller roller coaster called the Wild Westerner, and making their way through a house of mirrors that said Bakugo off to no end with its tricky illusions. As the quartet got off the roller coaster, Yaoyorozu looking slightly queasy and Hatsume grinning exuberantly from the experience, Bakugo looked around the park. Oi, Izuku he began, before the Greenette cut him off. Kaken, it's not fair for me to have a nickname for you and not the other way around. Please just call me Zuzu, like my friends and family do. The blonde looked ready to protest but acquiesced. Fine, Zuzu, it's your turn to pick. What are we doing next? Midoriya looked around the park. Well, we still haven't tried the escape room or the haunted house. If nothing else, we could go on the Ferris wheel again he began, before stiffening as he and the other 3 felt the hairs on the back of their necks stand up and a shiver run down their spines. Turning around, the quartet was just in time to see an enormous man with silver hair, wearing a blue hero costume with 2 large armbands, fly just over their heads and straight into the haunted house, the structure collapsing on top of him. Just a few moments later, the first screams could be heard, and within seconds people were scrambling to escape the park. Villains, Bakugo growled, little explosions popping in his hands as he prepared to defend himself if need be. That said, he wasn't going to actively pursue them, why would he? He's a preteen with a bit of an ego, not a suicidally overconfident moron with a chip on his shoulder. 2 more heroes were thrown into other rides and structures as an enormous metal figure stomped into the amusement park. The figure stood around 5 meters tall and had a square head with 4 glowing yellow eyes, 2 arms with large gauntlet-like forelimbs, and its torso ended on a platform supported by 4 spider-like legs. Pathetic, disappointing, wretched, the villain stated in a tinny, synthesized voice. Are Death Arms, the Fly and Slugger really the best heroes paragon symbols this city community metropolis has to offer? A groan sounded as Death Arms lifted the rubble of the haunted house off of himself. And you are? He asked. I am glad, joyful, jubilant, you asked. My designation is God Robot No. 2, and my mission goal purpose is to defeat, crush, obliterate the strongest hero this city has to offer. The now named G2 said as it introduced itself. Now. Bring me Endeavor. That. Won't be necessary, the blue-suited pro gasped as he stumbled towards the robot. I'm enough to deal with scum like you. Are you certain, assured, positive? The G2 responded, casually backhanding him into the Ferris wheel. Looking to one side, the robot noticed the 4 preteens. What is this? Children, adolescents, preteens? Scanning the quartet, the robot's programming found something surprising. MEI Hatsume and Izuku Midoriya, it said in an aggravatingly tinny voice. My master's creators builders were displeased when you declined their offer. For that, I and my brethren compatriots have been ordered programmed to take action against you. Who the hell did you 2 PSS off? Bakugo shouted. No, wait, that's not important, run. The quartet turned tail and ran as fast as they could away from the G2, which continued to scan them and their movements for a few moments. After running several computations, the robot's 4 legs crouched down and released, leaping high into the air and landing directly in front of them. Enough. Die, it proclaimed, rising its right fist to strike the 4 defiant children. No, shouted Death Arms, barely able to sit up to see the attack happen. A shockwave lifted a huge cloud of dust into the air, obscuring the amusement park grounds. Midoriya slowly opened his eyes, having squeezed them shut before the impact. To his surprise, however, all 4 of them were unharmed. But how? He began. Have no fear, citizens, you are safe now, a booming voice stated, echoing from within the cloud. The stress and fear melted off of people's faces as they heard possibly the most recognizable voice in Japan reassure them of their safety. As the cloud cleared, an enormous blonde man wearing a red, white and blue costume could be seen, holding back the G2's fist with one hand. Why? All Might asked, before answering his own question. Because I am here. In one swift movement, the giant man lifted the G2 by its fist and spun it around several times, releasing it and throwing it with incredible force into the ruins of the haunted house. Oklahoma. Smash. All Might. Midoriya cheered, the other 3 joining in with him. He's as strong as ever. He stopped that robot's attack with one hand. Bakugo shouted. Wow, Hatsume said, at a loss for words for the first time in her life. The number 1 hero is here to save us. Yaoyorozu trailed off in shock. All Might leapt over to the remains of the haunted house, landing on top of the G2 with incredible force. He managed to get 3 hits in before the robot threw him off of it and righted itself. All Might? An unexpected, unanticipated, surprising foe. My mission goal purpose was to defeat Endeavor, but you are a worthy opponent as well, the G2's robotic voice rang out. That arrogance will be your undoing, villain. All Might replied, leaping forward as he drew back his right fist. Texas. Smash. The blow heavily dented the robot's armor, but did not completely destroy it. All Might leapt backwards, shaking the numb feeling out of his knuckles. That armor is the hardest thing I've punched in several years, he noted. But another 3 or 4 hits should be enough to break through. Even if true, it shall not matter if I can eliminate, defeat, destroy you first, the G2 replied as its mouth opened to reveal a charging energy cannon. Particle beam. The pinkish energy blast surged forward, almost taking All Might by surprise and pushing him back at first. However, the symbol of peace dug his heels into the ground and grabbed the energy ball that had formed from the attack, before spinning around and hurling it high into the sky. Seattle. Smash. The energy ball disappeared into the sky, visibly cutting through a distant cloud before twinkling away as it breached the edge of space. As Midoriya ran away, he kept an eye on All Might's battle with the robot and noticed that it never let the symbol of peace see its back, where an odd-looking contraption seemed to vent hot air into the environment around it. The boy's eyes widened suddenly. Of course. I know what that is and why the G2 is protecting it so well. All Might, he shouted. There's an exhaust port on its back. If you hit it there, it should stop working. The black and blue eyes of the number 1 widened in surprise, before his grin widened. Thank you, young man, he exclaimed, blurring out of existence for a moment and reappearing behind the G2, fist ped back just below the exhaust port. New York. Smash. With one deft movement, All Might threw a powerful uppercut directly through the metal slats of the exhaust port and into its delicate core. A few moments later, the so-called God Robot No. 2 exploded in a shower of flames and metal fragments, a fierce wind whipping around the amusement park grounds. The symbol of peace stood triumphant over the robot's remains, arm raised in victory. Turning to the four children, All Might gave his signature smile and laugh. "Thank you, young man. You saved me quite the hassle with that robot," he said, reaching into a pouch on his belt and whipping out a pen. "Would you like an autograph as a symbol of my gratitude?" Midoriya was already in motion, pulling out his notebook and flipping it open to All Might's entry. "Why yes please, All Might," he shouted in a fanboy's joy. At the same time, Yaoyorozu created a nesting doll with the symbol of peace's likeness, Hatsume pulled off her glasses, and Bakugo pulled a much smaller notebook out of his pocket. "Looks like you're all pretty enthusiastic youngsters. Can I get your names for these autographs?" The blonde giant laughed, prompting the quartet to introduce themselves. Bakugo had barely finished his introduction when All Might signed all four items in the blink of an eye, his gaze briefly hovering over the notebook in the greenette's hands. "This kid's analytical skills are incredible. I can already tell that I'm going to need to remember these four." All Might thought to himself. "Well then, young Midoriya, young Bakugo, young Hatsume and young Yaoyorozu, here you are. Now, here's how a pro exits. Like he's got somewhere to be." With that, the symbol of peace leapt into the sky, disappearing as quick as he'd arrived. As the four children stood in stunned silence, a gleaming object caught Midoriya's eye. It was a small piece of metal armor from the G2's body, painted white. What was most distinctive about it, however, was the stylized black X in the middle of it. "Mei-chan, does this look familiar?" he asked Hatsume, turning to show the other three what he found in the wreckage. Hatsume's eyes widened. "That logo was on one of the offers from the competition," she trailed off in surprise. At the age of 12, Izuku Midoriya met an old friend again and learned that he may have made a new enemy. In the aftermath of the attack on Endoa Amusements and with the knowledge that the two of them were being hunted for some reason by a mysterious organization with an X as a logo, the families of Izuku Midoriya and Mei Hatsume called a meeting with the Bakugo and Yaoyorozu families to discuss the incident and how to approach the situation. It was decided, after conferring with local police and some of Muzutafu's heroes, that the Hatsume family would move to a different neighborhood in Kuruska Ward, and Mei and Izuku's workshop would be moved to an old tool shed at the Yaoyorozu Manor, located on the northern side of Tatooine Ward just to the east of Kuruska. RRR. 2 years after the G2 robots' attack, somewhere in Yaban Ward, Muzutafu. A storefront on a quiet street shattered as a bruised and battered man with purple skin leapt through it, a large bag of money in his hands. The sound of an alarm could be heard behind him as he dashed down the street, running as fast as he could. Within a few minutes, however, the sound of police sirens alerted him to the fact that he was being pursued, and as a pair of policemen on motorcycles rounded a corner and pursued him down a street, he knew he had to act. Suega Dorum wasn't the best and brightest of society, not by a long shot. He had averaged to decent grades in school. But his dreams of becoming an accountant had been dashed by society's judgment of his gross and villainous quirk. He got fired from over 35 separate jobs, but his one fallback ended up being the quirk that had destroyed his dreams in the first place. As the police gained on him, Dorum's true body slipped out of the corpse he had been possessing, a quirkless pensioner from Osaka, and grabbed the bag of money with a large pseudopod. This was his quirk, slime form, which allowed him to transform his body into sewer sludge, as well as absorbing sludge from external sources to increase his size and strength. "We were duped," one of the policemen shouted into a radio. "He's not a quirkless thief, he's a liquid mutation quirk possessing a dead body. Requesting heroic backup." As Dorum sped down another street, the bag of cash clutched in his pseudopod, a crowd of bystanders watched his retreat. "Remember back in the day, when there weren't as many weirdos with quirks causing havoc?" one old-timer asked another. "Hey now, are you calling us weirdos with quirks?" his friend retorted. "It's a cryin' shame, there ain't enough heroes for there to be any hope of keeping these fiends in check." A large figure strode up behind them. "No, there is hope today." "Why?" The group turned to see the most recognizable man in Japan, possibly in the entire world, standing right behind them. "Because I am here." All Might finished, a bag of groceries in his left hand. RRR. Kuruska Technical Middle School, at around that same time. Izuku Midoriya sighed as he sat at his desk, kicking his robotic legs as he doodled on a piece of scratch paper. For some reason, he found himself drawn back to prosthetic concepts. This time, he was looking at an artificial blood filtration system that could replace a missing kidney. Activated carbon inane electrified polydiometric scu justothetric dash. He was cut off by the entry of the class's homeroom teacher, who appeared in a puff of smoke at his podium. This was an elaborate effect of teacher Mitsutai Kukitsu's quirk, vapor volume, which allowed him to adjust the density and composition of the gases in the air within a 1-meter radius of himself. Kukitsu was a showman at heart, so he adjusted the density of the air to create an illusory blanket similar to a mirage in front of him as he walked into the class, then ignited some weak volatile organic compounds to create the smoke. He would have gotten in trouble at some other schools, but Karuska Technical's administration took advantage of some interesting loopholes in the Japanese quirk code to allow non-violent use of quirks on school grounds. For instance, a student with a quirk that allowed them to heat their palms up could use their quirk to reheat their lunch without repercussions. Good morning, class. Today, since you're entering your final school year, we'll be talking about career choices, he greeted, writing on the whiteboard behind him. Anyone have any plans on what they want to do or where they want to go for high school yet? 4 hands from their 30-person classroom shot up, a girl with a low-power, high-accuracy wind quirk, a male transfer student from America with a quirk that let him shoot laser beams reaching up to 300 degrees Celsius from his eyes, a boy with a quirk that gave him prehensile chest hair, and a girl with a modest ice quirk, and announced their intentions to be hero students. 4 for the heroics track. Next, a stunning 18 hands shot up and announced their intent to become business students. 8 students left. What else? A gray-haired boy raised a stone-covered hand, announcing his intent to work towards armed security. 7. Who else? 5 hands shot up, stating that they'd be attending a general studies program before entering university. Admirable, admirable. Only 2 left. Hatsume, Midoriya? Hatsume answered for both of them. Izuku and I are planning on attending UA High for hero support, she stated matter-of-factly, and murmurs spread through the room. UA? Isn't that the country's top private high school? Can they really pull it off? Bro, are you kidding? Look at Midoriya's robot legs, if anyone can get into the top school, it's them. I feel a little inadequate now. Kukitsu reined his class back in. Alright, I'll pass out the high school application sheets for administrative accounting purposes. He and his entire class rolled their eyes in sync at the mention of paperwork. RRR. A few hours later, classes ended, letting Midoriya and Hatsume free for the rest of the day. So, Zuzu, what are you doing next? Hatsume asked her green-haired friend. I'm headed to Tatooine. Kaken and I are planning on meeting up to go see All Might's party in the USA. One of the theaters there is holding a special 25th anniversary screening for it, Midoriya responded. Hatsume rolled her eyes. You're both total nerds, even if Blasty doesn't want to admit it, she giggled. Midoriya snorted. You're calling me a nerd, Mei-chan? You've got enough nerd for Kaken and I plus Momo and her brother, he responded. Mei punched his shoulder playfully. Whatever you say, nerd, she laughed. I'm gonna go to the lair and hang out with Momo. I want to see if I can make my miniature electric dynamo baby work. Have fun and be safe. Midoriya responded, turning and running off towards his house. The green-haired teen changed out of his school uniform and into a pair of long pants and a t-shirt with "T-shirt" printed on it, before heading out to meet his friend. RRR. As he passed under a bridge, a feeling of unease crept up Midoriya's spine. The greenette heard a disgusting sloshing noise behind him, leading him to whirl around just in time to see a living mass of sewer slime leap from a manhole, holding a bag of cash in its hand. Holy sheet, that was terrifying, the slime warbled, before it noticed Midoriya. Perfect timing, kid. I was needing a good quality skin suit to hide in, the slime man shouted, wrapping around Midoriya and forcing his pseudopods into the teen's mouth and nose. This should only hurt for around 45 seconds or so, and then it'll be lights out. Thank you for being here. You're my hero? Is this how I die? Without ever amounting to anything other than being a test dummy for Mei's inventions, not that that was a bad thing, and being targeted by weird robot builders? Mom and Dad, Momo. Mei-chan, Kaken. I'm sorry. The cover of the manhole exploded off of the street and into the air. I'd have you unhand that young man, foul villain, boomed Japan's most recognizable voice. Sheet, he's already caught up, the slime shouted, panicking. Have no fear, young man. Why? Because I am here. Texas. All Might began, winding his right arm up behind him. Smash! The blonde man punched the air with such force that its displacement created a pressure wave that expelled every bit of slime from Midoriya's orifices, then splattered the sludge villain all over the walls of the tunnel, knocking him out. All Might, Midoriya murmured, just before he blacked out. RRR. Hey now, young man, wake up. Midoriya heard All Might say as he was lightly slapped awake by the symbol of peace. All Might, the boy stuttered, sitting up and scooting backwards. What happened to that villain? Oh, him? He's already contained. All Might responded, brandishing 2 emptied soda bottles which now held the slimy body of the sludge villain. That's very creative, Midoriya noted. A lack of creativity can cripple a pro, All Might responded. Would you like an autograph? I already got one from you, during the Iendoa Amusements attack, Midoriya responded. All Might's sunken blue eyes squinted, then widened slightly in recognition. Young Izuku Midoriya, right? I remember you now, your observational skills were invaluable in helping me defeat that robot. Thank you, Midoriya murmured. If that's all, I'll be going now. A pro is always fighting the clock after all. All Might replied, sliding the sludge bottles into his pockets. Thank you for supporting us on the sidelines every day. Wait. Midoriya shouted, grabbing All Might's leg just as the man jumped into the air. What are you doing, young Midoriya? Please let go. All Might yelped in surprise. I can't. Mei-chan's prosthetics are amazing, but I'd still die if I fell from this height. Midoriya responded. Oh. Right. My bad, All Might responded, a small line of blood sliding out of his mouth. I'm almost out of time. The symbol of peace and his unexpected passenger landed on a nearby rooftop. You can knock on the door and someone will let you in, young Midoriya. I have to go now, All Might said. Wait. Midoriya cried, stopping All Might in his tracks. I need to ask you something. Can someone without a quirk become a hero? All Might froze, as Midoriya began to mutter. Oh crap, looks like my time is up. A cloud of steam exploded across the rooftop, stunning Midoriya. When the green-haired teen looked to where the hero had been, he was scared out of his wits by the emaciated man who stood where the symbol of peace had just been. An imposter. The man coughed. No, I assure you, young Midoriya, I am all me dash. He was cut off by a coughing fit that ended with blood spewing all across the rooftop in front of him. Midoriya offered him a handkerchief, which he gratefully took. I got injured real bad 5 years ago, All Might said, raising his shirt to reveal a nasty scar on his left side. A lens dropped down from Midoriya's headband to cover his left eye, scanning the wound. The teen began to mutter as he analyzed the data. That is a very serious injury. All Might is missing 3/4 of his left lung, half his pancreas, almost his entire stomach, his spleen and his left kidney, he began, the symbol of peace paling at his analysis. This means that All Might is likely diabetic, cannot consume more than about 1/4 of an average meal portion at a time, has his overall lung capacity reduced by 38%, and his blood filtration reduced by 52%. The lens raised from over Midoriya's eye. All Might's durability is legendary. He once stated that a concentrated missile barrage could hardly scratch him. This means that someone would have to have stacked the equivalent of multiple strength quirks and possibly multiple quirks that allowed for puncturing materials. I hypothesize that this means there is someone out there with the society-shattering ability to give and take quirks, as only someone with that kind of power could hope to damage All Might, Midoriya finished, before falling backwards in stunned shock at his own analysis, looking distinctly traumatized. This is very bad news, and definitely not the work of Toxic Chainsaw like I would have originally guessed. All Might sputtered in surprise. You deduced all that just by looking at my injury? He asked, before he remembered the detailed analyses he had seen in the boy's notebook 2 years earlier. Who am I kidding? Of course you figured that out. The only other being I know of with analytic abilities like that is Principal Nizu. I take it you understand not to tell anyone about this. I wouldn't have called out that kind of ability as society-shattering if I didn't, All Might, the Greenette replied. Good. Now may I ask what it is you wanted to know, young Midoriya, the symbol of pace questioned. Midoriya sighed and rolled his pant legs up to reveal the cybernetic attachments that allowed him to walk. All Might's eyes widened in surprise at the sight. I take it that you're familiar with the Tatooine Department Mall bombing that happened 7 years ago here in Muzurifu? All Might nodded. Yeah, I know about that one. Captain Celebrity passed some information about it on to me, although a few things didn't make sense about the attack to me, he muttered. How were there bombers there? I was fairly certain that we mopped all of those up when the villain factory was busted, and number 6 died in that fight with Skycrawler when he blew himself up. My legs were trapped under some rubble when I saved my friend Katsuki, Midoriya explained. After they were amputated, I figured I could never become a hero. And then I met my friends Mei and Momo, who helped me build these legs, which let me walk again. So with that in mind, can I become a hero, even if it's not a quirk I'm relying on? All Might took on a thoughtful expression. Heroes have to be ready to make sacrifices to protect the innocent in the field. However, if you have the resolve to do that if you need to, then I see no reason why you shouldn't be able to become a hero, even if you outright have no quirk at all, he said. A determined young man like you, with the know-how to create inventions that will let you keep up with the strongest of quirks? Yes, young Midoriya. I think you can become a hero. The young man stared in awe at his idol as he gave him the news he'd always hoped to hear, but the sound of an explosion cut him off. Both the tall man and the short teen turned to look towards downtown Tatooine Ward, where a rising plume of smoke signaled trouble. I know those explosions, Kakin. Upon that declaration, Midoriya rushed to the edge of the rooftop, and in one swift motion, the teen leapt across the small alleyway between it and the next building, given a significant boost by his artificial legs. Using this same method, the greenette descended to street level, 5 stories below where he started, and raced towards the commotion, leaving a stunned All Might behind him. That kid's not bad at all. RRR. Midoriya arrived at the edge of a crowd and pushed his way through to find out what was going on. The teen's eyes widened in horror as he saw the same sludge villain from earlier that day, the one that had attacked him, now latched onto his best friend's body. Bakugo was doing his best to resist, but all he succeeded in doing with his explosive attacks was destroying the storefronts around him. Why isn't a hero helping? Someone asked. I don't know, another responded. The pro-hero known as Death Arms rushed in, smashing his fists together to activate his strength quirk, before punching the sludge villain. To his horror, however, his fist sank into the villain's body. Sorry, Death Arms, the sludge warbled. But you're not nearly strong enough to hurt me. The pro was forced to retreat, cursing his luck. I can't generate the force needed. Woods. Kamui Woods looked around, clearly almost in a state of panic. I can't get in there with this much fire, I'd be burned to a crisp. Backdraft. The water-using hero shook his head. The police haven't shown up yet, so crowd control is on me. Maybe Mount Lady can do something? The gigantic woman looming above the end of the street was in a genuine state of panic. I can't do anything, the road is too small and my quirk only has 2 modes, on and off. Midoriya took in the situation. Kakin can't get himself free because he can't get his hands turned around to achieve the move he needs to break free. None of the pros can get in there on their own, and seem content to watch him suffocate while they wait for Endeavor to show up. This is bad that I have to do something. Racing out past the stunned and horrified pros, Midoriya rushed the sludge villain. You again? The slime shouted. You little sheet. I only have 1 shot at this, the greenette thought, pulling a limited edition All Might California Smash pen out of his left pocket and throwing it at the sludge. The pen sank point first into the eye of the sludge villain, making him recoil enough that Bakugo was able to get some air. Zuzu? What the hell are you doing here? He gasped. Kakin. I can't just watch you die. You could get out if you weren't tied in a spot with poor leverage by this guy's slime. So I'll get you some better leverage. Midoriya responded, yanking Bakugo as far out of the sludge as he could and twisting the blonde teen's body around so that both his hands faced the villain, who was still stunned from the pen to the eye. And Midoriya's right arm, which was steadying Bakugo enough to allow him to aim his hands. Zuzu, I can't do it. Your arm is in the way, the explosive blonde protested, but his green-haired friend fixed him with an expression of desperation, a manic gleam in his eye. Just do it. Midoriya roared. Bakugo grit his teeth, closed his eyes and flinched back as the slime began to recover. God damn it, he shouted, letting loose with the most powerful blasts he could muster, blowing him back out of the villain's grip and landing roughly on the pavement, blacking out for a moment. When he reawoke, the sludge was bearing down on him again. A gust of wind caught everyone off guard. I'm so pathetic, letting a teenager do my job for me, All Might stated. A hero's got to break his limits if he's to earn the respect of the people. Detroit. Smash. An enormous blast of wind pressure splattered the sludge villain's body all across the pavement, creating a downdraft that drew in a rainstorm from over 30 kilometers away. He changed the weather. In one punch, Bakugo murmured, before his mind circled back around to his best friend. Zuzu? Zuzu, he shouted in a panic, sitting up and looking around for his friend. Fortunately, he didn't have to look far. But that was where the good news ended. Midoriya's unconscious body had ended up pushed against a mail drop box on the side of the street by the wind pressure. He was out cold, bleeding from a head wound. And worst of all, there was almost nothing left of his right arm below the elbow. Bakugo's escape blast had shredded the arm into hamburger meat that was slowly being washed into a storm drain by the rain. Zuzu, hold on, he shouted at his best friend. Somebody call a FING ambulance. After that, Bakugo's afternoon faded away into a blur of sirens, flashing lights, and cold rain. RRR. Toshinori Yagi sighed solemnly as he escaped the press, getting to safety and powering down. That slime quirk villain had been far more trouble than he'd imagined. A sign that his power was ticking down quicker and quicker. Not only that, but the quirkless boy with robotic limbs that he'd met earlier had gotten grievously injured doing the job of the other pros on the scene for them, something that he would make sure earned them some serious reprimands. A hero isn't supposed to just stand around waiting for someone with the right quirk to show up, damn it. A buzzing noise in his pocket alerted him to a phone call. Pulling the device out, Yagi's eyes widened slightly in surprise, before he answered it. Mirai? It's really you, he asked. Toshinori. It's been far too long, muttered the voice of his former sidekick, Mirai Sasaki, also known as Sir Night-Eye, from the other end of the phone. Yes, it has, and for that, I am sorry, Yagi answered. Don't be. It was my fault, Toshi. I lost my temper all those years ago because of an anger born from worry. And I am truly sorry for that. Can you forgive me, even if I don't think I deserve it? Mirai, Yagi began. I already forgave you, and I'm the one who should be sorry. I was the reckless idiot who refused to retire or take the necessary time to recover after the fight with All for One. I should be the one who is asking for forgiveness here, not you. I forgave you years ago for your recklessness, Toshi, and since you've forgiven me for my anger. I think we can move forward from this. Are you seeking a successor for One for All yet? I am, Yagi said, sighing. I'm running out of time too quickly these days. A fine young man who I had considered as a candidate due to his heroic heart and selfless nature was grievously wounded today because I was too weak and too slow to save him. I saw. That boy exhibited the heart of a true hero today, and I hope he recovers well. Still. Might I interest you in a young man I took on as an intern last year and kept on this year for work studies? His name is Mirio Togata. RRR. 18 hours later. Izuku Midoriya slowly stirred from his deep slumber, staring up at an unfamiliar ceiling. Ah great, another unfamiliar ceiling in a room choked with the sweet smell of antiseptic. Wonderful, he snarked internally, sitting up and looking around. This time, instead of his mother, it was Bakugo who was snoozing in the chair next to his bed. Kaken, wake up. The blonde shot to his feet, hands already glowing slightly as he readied an explosion, before realizing it was just his friend. Oh, it's just you, Zuzu. I was worried that sludgefucker was back to finish the job, the blonde growled, before taking on a melancholy look. Though I hurt you worse than he did. Kaken, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't I the one who told you to use your explosions to free yourself, consequences be demanded? Midoriya asked. That's true, but still dash. Bakugo began, before Midoriya cut him off. Listen, Kaken, I knew that I was going to get hurt, he said, raising what was left of his right arm. I made my choice the second I decided that making sure you got home to Aunt Mitsuki and Uncle Masaru was more important than my health and well-being. It's not the first time I've done something stupidly heroic, anyway. Bakugo looked conflicted, but finally acquiesced. TCH, find out. I'll accept your decision, you DMN selfless nerd. You'd better stop getting hurt saving my butt though, he growled, pulling his phone out and shooting a text off. Crazy Eyes and Print Shop are on their way up from the cafeteria right now. They were working on something when they got the news about your injury. Scarcely 2 minutes had passed before the door burst open and Hatsume leapt through the door, tackling her best friend in a hug, much to his surprise. I was so worried when I got the news, Zuzu, she cried, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. Midoriya looked shocked for a moment, before a soft smile settled on his face as he wrapped his left arm around her shoulders comfortingly. I'll be okay, Mei-chan. Besides, we can fix this, can't we, he said, gesturing to his stump. That's right, Izuku, Yaoyorozu said calmly, walking into the room with a briefcase at her side. Mei and I have been working on a little project since the moment we heard you were injured. Midoriya took a moment to inspect his friends' faces and realized that all three of them had deep, dark circles around their eyes and looked very disheveled, even the ever-stoic, always graceful Momo Yaoyorozu. You guys. Did you even sleep last night? The fact that all three other teens looked at each other awkwardly told Midoriya everything he needed to know. DMN, I thought I was finally starting to break through with some of your self-destructive behaviors, he muttered. And we thought we were making headway on yours, and then you got your arm blown off being a big DMN hero yesterday, so turnabout is fair play, Hatsume snarked at him, a tinge of irritation in her voice. Yaoyorozu opened the briefcase and pulled out a steely prosthetic arm with dull green lines on it. It may have taken 14 hours of non-stop development and 9 separate runs to MG Ronald's, but we successfully built a new arm for you, the ponytailed girl stated. We call it Dash. Hatsume cut her off. The Hero Maker, she exclaimed, before tapping her chin thoughtfully. Actually, since it's the first in the Hero Maker series, we figured it'd be better to call it Maker Mark 1, eh? Midoriya admired the gunmetal gray of the arm, reaching out to flick the on switch. Seeing the green highlights light up dimly, running off of battery power, the teen placed his headset on his head and activated it, reaching for the feeling of fingers. After a few moments, Midoriya was able to wiggle his fingers, slowly working his way up to clenching a fist and flashing a thumbs up. Slowly, a small smile worked its way onto his face. Mei-chan, Yamamo, Kaken. I ran into All Might again today. Before he showed up to save Kaken and he began. I asked him if a quirkless person could be a hero, and he told me that as long as I had the willpower and resolve to put my life on the line to protect others, I could be a hero even without a quirk. Admiring the Maker One, his smile widened. But with technology like this. With friends like you. I know for sure that I can be a hero, he finished. Looking up, he fixed his three stunned friends with his most brilliant, hopeful smile. So, what do you say? Are you on board with changing the world and becoming heroes? Bakugo was the first to step up. I haven't met anyone who could give me a challenge yet in my quest to become the #1 hero, surpassing All Might, he said, before a feral grin crossed his face. Except you. Even when I was a little a-hole, even when you had no way to fight back, you still protected other kids from me. In sheer willpower, you're even better than me. Reaching his left hand out for a fist bump, the blonde's feral grin became something a little more genuine. If anyone is a worthy rival to learn alongside, compete alongside, and become a hero alongside, it's you, Izuku. I'm in. Yaoyorozu was next. I may have had my family's business expectations placed on me, but truthfully, I've always wanted to be a hero. I've been waiting for you to ask me this question, because I've been waiting to say yes, she said, holding her hand out as well. Finally, Hatsume joined the fold. I don't want to become a hero, I never have. But I've always wanted to support the next generation of heroes, and if it's my 3 best friends who are the first to take my babies into the field, then so be it. I'm in. The 4 friends bumped their fists together, making a promise to climb alongside each other to protect the innocent, defeat the villainous, and become the best heroes they could be. There wasn't a dry eye in the room, especially not from Inko and Hisashi when they arrived. At the age of 14, Izuku Midoriya traded his right arm to reclaim his childhood dream. 2 days after the sludge villain incident, Daika Central Tower. Darkness fell over Daika City, a city of around 109,000 located in the mountains of eastern Aichi Prefecture. Daika was an oft-forgotten industrial hub in Aichi, overlooked in favor of the larger metropolis of Toyota, but still had a sizable business presence, largely thanks to one company, the Detnerat Corporation, headquartered in Daika Central Tower. A door burst open as a gaunt man with a distinctive triangular nose and a receding crop of orange hair strode into a darkened conference room, his coat billowing around his shoulders. As he walked, black marks blossomed like ink into a domino mask of sorts around his eyes. The jovial CEO of Detnerat, Rikiya Yatsubashi, was off duty. In his place stood Redestro, Grand Commander of the Reborn Meta Liberation Army. The other 4 people gathered around the table all made a salute with their thumb and forefinger, creating what looked like an L for liberation when viewed from the side. The first was a woman with blue skin, lilac hair and black eyes, a notepad at her side. This was Chitose Kazuki, ace reporter and executive director of Shueisha Publishing, also known as Curious, chief intelligence officer of the Meta Liberation Army. On her right sat a man with lengthy dark hair, wearing a plain-looking business suit and a pair of yellow-tinted glasses. This individual was Koku Hanabata, an elected member of the Japanese National Diet's upper chamber, the House of Councillors, widely acknowledged as the leader of Japan's fastest-growing political group, the Hearts and Minds Party. He was also known as Trumpet, Tactical Outreach Director of the Meta Liberation Army. On the opposite side of the table stood a tall, thin man with long dark hair that covered his eyes and ran down his back, wearing a simplistic outfit consisting of a black turtleneck and dark gray pants. This man was Tomoyasu Chikazoku, chairman of the board at technology company Feel Good Incorporated, but was also known as Skeptic, vice commander of the Meta Liberation Army. Finally, the last person at the table was a man clad in a heavy-duty winter parka, his hood down to show his face. He had messy, shoulder-length white hair and dark gray eyes, all increasing the already Bishonen appearance of his fine-boned facial structure. This man was Geaton, who had discarded his family's name over 20 years earlier with his commitment to Redestro's service as Iceman, war chief of the Meta Liberation Army. On the wall hung a portrait of a man with a receding head of orange hair drawn back into a long ponytail and a thin, scraggly goatee, wearing a high-collared green coat with a blood-red shirt underneath. His face was adorned with black markings that formed a domino mask around his eyes, just like those on Redestro's face. This man was the late Chikara Yatsubashi, a second-generation quirk user best known to the world as Destro, the original leader of the Meta Liberation Army. He was also the father of Rikiya Yatsubashi. I call this meeting to order at 6:32 p.m., Redestro stated. Skeptic, roll the footage of the sludge villain incident from Yuzurifu a few days ago. The skinny man typed something on his computer, and a screen on another wall lit up, showing news footage of the sludge villain incident. This fascinating little story hit the news a few days ago, and now the propaganda corps and the government are lauding these two children as examples of heroism, Redestro stated, the last part coming out as more of a sigh than anything else. They're relevant to tonight's meeting, but not my main focus. That villain was reported to have shown up earlier in the day, pursued by none other than the symbol of peace. Skeptic, pull up the footage you compiled earlier. His vice commander once more obliged, and a short video of slightly grainy footage edited together from security cameras in Tatooine Ward began to play, showing the slimy villain being pursued across the city by All Might in casual clothes. Then it changed to a different part, showing the sludge by itself cornering the blonde teenager. Conspicuously absent from the scene? All Might. As you can see, this deranked villain somehow escaped from the wielder of the most powerful strength-based meta ability ever recorded, Yatsubashi said, gesturing to the screen. This brings me to one of two possible conclusions. Either this villain is exceptionally smart and powerful despite his ranking, or our analysts are correct and the symbol of peace is weakening. The room fell silent as the potential implications of this statement. If All Might was truly weakening, then the peace that had allowed the Meta Liberation Army to secretly recruit enough people to potentially start an all-out civil war against the Japanese government and the HPSC was in severe peril, and with it, their secrecy. There's more, sir, Skeptic said, dialing the footage back to the beginning when All Might first appeared. Dialing up the resolution and zooming in on an unassuming blonde individual who appeared to be severely ill, the dark-haired man rolled the footage again and listened to his compatriots gasp as he transformed into the symbol of peace. Skeptic, what is this? Trumpet asked, a shocked expression on his face. That man was identified by my background check algorithms as Toshinori Yagi, All Might's personal secretary at Might Tower, Skeptic said in response. But digging deeper, you realize that Yagi and All Might have the same birthday, the same blood type and the same hair and eye color. And then, looking back to nearly 4 decades ago, we see this very same Toshinori Yagi competing in and winning UA High's first-year sports festival, the one All Might is said to have won, because they're the exact same person. Is there anything else you're not sharing with us about the symbol of peace, Skeptic? Redestro asked, a dangerous edge entering his voice. Skeptic gulped slightly but continued anyway. About that, Grand Commander. I checked Yagi's quirk registry out of curiosity, it says he's quirkless, the dark-haired man said. But when I hacked into the Ministry of Public Health's quirk registry, it showed something odd. Yagi was listed as quirkless until he was 14, and then there's a large gap where his status is heavily classified until 6 years ago, when it changes back to quirkless. Looking around the room, Skeptic coughed slightly. I'm afraid that the quirk thief is somehow involved. This time, the room was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Finally, the sound of breaking glass could be heard as Redestro's empty wine glass was crushed in his hand. Oh no, the man breathed softly, as black markings covered his face. The other 4 eyed him warily. Trumpet and Skeptic's meta abilities weren't the most combat applicable, and if he truly went into a rage, neither Curious nor even Iceman had the firepower needed to bring Redestro to a halt long enough to calm himself. Taking a few deep breaths, Yatsubashi looked around the room. If it's true that All Might and the quirk thief are somehow connected, then he's definitely noticed that the number 1 hero is weakening. In fact, he may have had a role in it, the revolutionary leader said. We need to assume he's going to act within the next year and plan accordingly. If his condition is similar to All Might's, this may be a once-in-a-century chance to finally eliminate him. As all the black markings aside from his domino mask receded, Redestro gestured to Skeptic. That's the first big item covered. Let's move on to the children. Once again, Skeptic obliged, and a file came up on the blonde teen. Explosion? Now there's a powerful meta ability, Trumpet noted. He seems like he could have been a solid recruit at some point down the line. Agreed, Curious added, noticing the similarities between her meta ability and his. Problem is that he was an Aldera middle school student, which means he'll likely distrust anything remotely resembling our ideology for the rest of his life. We should have acted to take those fools down sooner, Geaton growled. They were right to value the strengthening of one's meta ability as a facet of everyday life, but they lost the right to ever preach Destro's philosophy when they attempted that shameful disgrace. Much of the public education system in Aldera Ward was the unexpected side effect of a failed coup nearly 15 years earlier against Redestro by the Radical faction, a wing of the MLA with a might-makes-right philosophy above all else and a quirk eugenics program to match. Geaton was their secret weapon in the coup, but failed when Redestro showed him something nobody in his birth family ever had outside of his eldest sister, basic human decency. Sometimes Geaton wondered how she was doing. The family had deemed her too weak to even train, and so she hadn't been involved when the Himura clan committed mass seppuku after their ace surrendered. Other members of that coup, however, had not participated in an honor-based suicide. Instead, they were excommunicated from the Meta Liberation Army and told never to speak of the group's existence unless they wanted to violate a forced secrecy meta ability and violently choke on their own tongues. Several of these families had settled in Aldera Ward and eventually gotten involved with the school board, taking covert control of the curriculum and faculty and slowly transforming the local elementary and middle schools into a recruiting ground for another coup. Luckily for the MLA, they were busted in a sting operation and several members died violating the aforementioned secrecy quirk. We should have indeed, but that group is thankfully no longer an issue, Redestro said. What about the other boy? This time, Midoriya's file came up. Izuku Midoriya, 14, Karuska Technical Middle School, Skeptic read off, before raising his eyebrow. He's quirkless. Fascinating, Redestro said. If the masses are willing to laud even one not yet graced by the gifts of evolution, perhaps meta-liberation may be more achievable in the near future than we had hoped. The era to act has most certainly come. The balding man's eyes then narrowed on one part of the footage playing on the wall, and he quickly grabbed a remote to pause it and zoom in. I've seen robotic legs like those before. The winner of the national competition a few years back, he muttered to himself, turning to the assembled group. Curious, Trumpet, find any way you can to spin the story in our favor as much as possible. Skeptic, get extra surveillance on Midoriya and his associates. Particularly a girl by the name of Mei Hatsume, he said, issuing his orders to his top commanders. Finally, he turned to the cryogenic Bishinen at the table. An Iceman, he said, a small smile ghosting across his face. Keep up your training. You may have a future symbol to test and a self-proclaimed demon lord to slay. RRR. 2 months later, Dagoba Beach Municipal Park. Momo Yaoyorozu raced down the narrow streets of Dagoba District, rapidly approaching her destination. The streets slowly widened as she got closer to the coast, granting her a view of said destination, a giant garbage dump on the beach once known as Dagoba Beach Municipal Park. While it had once been beautiful in the past, a villain attack that destroyed an adjacent resort littered the beach with debris, while ocean currents began to wash trash ashore. Shortly afterwards, people started dumping their garbage illegally there. Well, until Mei Hatsume found out about it and had immediately engaged their friend group in eliminating the trash to both obtain raw materials and train for UA's entrance exams. Running down a flight of concrete stairs from the cliffside above to the beach below, Yaoyorozu followed the muffled sounds of explosions and machinery around several towering stacks of garbage to one of the few open sections of the beach. Sure enough, her friends were all there. Bakugo was slinging explosions to disassemble a stack of old stoves, cars and refrigerators, Hatsume was inspecting some kind of reprocessed metal ingot from her forge, and Midoriya was practicing his demolition work with his latest prosthetic. Good morning, friends. Yaoyorozu shouted, catching everyone's attention. Morning, Bakugo grumbled, sad that he'd been taken from his work when he was getting so into it. Good morning. Midoriya greeted in a much more respectful manner. Hiya Momo. Hatsume said, her protective goggles sliding up to reveal her mutant eyes. What's got you in such a hurry today? Yaoyorozu reached into a bag by her side and withdrew an envelope. Midoriya's eyes widened. Is that an official UA seal? The ponytailed girl beamed. It is. Father called a few of his connections in the Heroics Commission and UA's faculty and staff, and managed to secure an invitation for me to take the recommendation exam in October. The other three all sighed at her casual mention of her father's connections in high places. What a rich kid. Good job, Momo. Midoriya congratulated her. Not half bad, Ponytail, Bakugo added with a grin. Great. Now then, I have another test I'd like to run on 2 of my finest babies. Hatsume said, turning to pull a white sheet off of something very large. As the cloth fell away, a robotic suit about 4 meters tall gleamed in the sunlight, its coat of yellow paint adding to its character. 2 little antennae on the head seemed to pay homage to All Might, while the wheels on either side of its legs and on its arms implied some kind of vehicle capability. Looking at it, Yaoyorozu felt herself remembering staring up at the G2 robot at the amusement park several years earlier. Let me introduce you to Hatsume baby number 1841, the Power Dizzer suit. I based it on that funky robot we saw a few years ago, Hatsume said gleefully. Today, this baby will test its mettle against Hatsume baby number 1820, with the help of Hatsume baby number 988. Wait, Midoriya began. Hatsume baby number 1841 is the maker one. And Hatsume baby number 988 is the leg modules. The greenette's eyes widened. I have to fight that for your test? Relax, Zuzu. Hatsume responded, leaping onto a ladder on the machine's backside, brandishing a very large power cell in her hand. I'll be gentle with you. Seemingly to prove her point, the pinkette winked at her friend as she inserted the power cell and leapt into the machine's cockpit, though this just elicited a blush from the green-haired teen. Midoriya stretched and cracked the knuckles of his left hand, the visor from his headband sliding down to cover his left eye. Hatsume, meanwhile, flicked several switches, multiple displays lighting up around her as the mech suit initialized. "Power Dizzer," a mechanical voice announced, signifying the machine's activation. "Kick some butt," Bakugo shouted as the de facto referee, a small explosion emphasizing his point. Midoriya immediately shot forward, the motors in his legs helping him move far quicker than the average heroic student. Ducking under a powerful strike from Hatsume's machine, the teen quickly grabbed the arm with his hero maker and flipped upwards onto the appendage, then leapt upwards with the intent of dropping onto the machine. His right leg opened up to reveal 2 rocket boosters, which the teen then activated. Rocket Stomp. Midoriya shot downwards in a blink of an eye, but Hatsume's robo displayed surprising speed as it evaded the blow, ports on its side opening up to shoot little ball at him. "Those are dash." Midoriya began to wonder, only to be cut off as they exploded to reveal nets. "Capture nets." "Damn it." Midoriya managed to evade most of the traps, but one of the nets caught him and pinned him against an old refrigerator. The Power Dizzer's chest plate opened up, revealing a cannon. "Incinerate." Thinking quickly, the teen heaved the refrigerator upwards with the help of his cybernetic implants, whirling around just in time for the archaic appliance to bear the brunt of a powerful flamethrower. Even shielded by the mass of metal, the heat still scorched the cybernetic teen, but in the process the net melted out from around him. Dropping to the ground, Midoriya delivered a double-footed kick to the half-melted fridge, launching it towards Hatsume. The large machine swatted it aside, but the greenette successfully used the diversion to find cover behind another junk pile. Hatsume's machine looked from side to side, before a hatch on its face popped open to reveal a large red lens. After a few moments of scanning, it looked directly at one of the piles. "Incinerate." The greenette dove out from behind the pile just before another blast melted it down. "Thermal vision? That's got to be cheating, Mei-chan," he protested, grabbing a large tank off the ground and throwing it at his foe. The Power Dizzer shot another blast of flame, but the old propane tank exploded into a tremendous fireball, briefly confounding its thermal vision. The flames died down just as Midoriya dropped down in front of it, the green lines on the Maker 1 glowing golden. "Titanium. Smash," the greenette roared, driving his fist directly into the incineration cannon in the middle of its charging cycle. The attack sputtered and died, and a few moments later the Power Dizzer went dark, with a visibly sweaty Hatsume climbing out wiping her brow. "Not bad, Zuzu," she panted, steam rolling off of her. "Turns out that it gets pretty hot in there when it's in combat mode. I should probably add a better cooling system." Midoriya walked her over to a beach umbrella they'd set up and grabbed a bottle of water for her out of a cooler. "That incineration cannon is a super cool concept though," he said, drinking a water bottle of his own. "I think it'd be a neat feature for the Hero Maker system, and using your mini electric dynamo in one for electrical abilities would be really cool too." "I'll take that as a challenge," Hatsume giggled, drinking most of her water and dumping the rest on her head to cool herself down. Nearby, Yaoyorozu began her own training by attacking a training dummy with a metal staff she'd created, and Bakugo returned to his demolition work. RRR. 4 months later, UA High School recommendation exams. "Greetings, prospective young heroes," called a voice within an enormous auditorium. Only the front 200 seats of the auditorium were actually occupied, as that was the maximum number of recommendations that UA invited to the exam every year. The voice in question came from a small white mammal wearing a stylish waistcoat and trousers. A large scar crossed his right eye, which itself scanned the crowd of students. "Am I a dog, a rat, or a bear? Who knows, but one thing is for sure, I'm the principal." Principal Nizu, the enigmatic head of UA High, introduced himself to the crowd. Throughout the crowd, prospective students felt the principal's beady eyes scan their souls. Some grimaced, like an ashen-haired boy with no lips on his face and a green-haired girl with sharp teeth. Others stiffened, like Yaoyorozu and a blue-haired boy wearing glasses. One applicant looked notably more fired up than before, an enormous boy with a buzz-cut hairstyle. And some, like a boy with bicolored red and white hair, didn't react at all. All 200 of you are here today because of your drive to pursue public service in hopes of upholding peace and justice, and because your abilities or drive have earned the notice of those already defending the public. Nizu addressed the students, before a large screen lit up behind him. "Allow me to now introduce the exam's format. As with any UA entrance examination, the first part of your trial shall be a comprehensive written exam covering mathematics, Japanese, English, the sciences, economics, the heroics acts and the quirk code," the principal explained. This exam will cut your numbers at least in half. A maximum of 100 students will be allowed to pass and take the practical exam. Speaking of the practical exam, this year you shall run a 5-kilometer obstacle race starting in Training Ground A. You will be judged on your overall time and the creativity with which you use your quirk by a panel of mostly impartial judges from the UA Board of Trustees. Nizu finished. Now then, you should know by now to go beyond, plus ultra. Silence filled the auditorium, and the principal resisted the urge to sigh. Human children these days are very uptight, he thought to himself. Anyway, your exam begins. Now. The doors burst open and several clones of the cloning hero, Ectoplasm, made their way into the room to distribute tests and pencils, then take up positions around the room to proctor the exam. Here I go. Wish me luck, everyone. Yaoyorozu thought to herself, diving into the first question. RRR. It turned out that there had not, in fact, been a full 100 passing examinees. Only 46 of the original 200 remained, enough for all the contestants to be placed in a single free-for-all race instead of 2 groups of 50. Heeyyyyyy, little listeners, shouted the voice hero, present Mike. It's the one, the only, the present MIC, here to proctor your exam. Most of the students relaxed slightly at the sight of a hero who was widely known to be pretty easygoing despite how effective a hero he was. The man had placed at number 53 in the previous year's hero rankings. The only ones who didn't relax were the bichromatic teen, who remained ice-cold to all his surroundings, and the blue-haired boy, who stiffened slightly. I think you all know the drill, line up here and wait for the race to start. Mike added, watching the students subconsciously move to be ready for action. And remember, you're not just being judged on your time, you're also being judged on your creativity. So go beyond. Plus ultra. Suddenly, the gate ahead of them shot open with alarming speed. And there's your signal. Go. There are no countdowns in reality, after all. Mike shouted. A sudden chill filled the air before the bichromatic teen exploded ahead on a wave of ice, racing directly into the city while narrowing the path behind him. Immediately afterwards, a burst of wind filled the air as the muscular teen with the buzz cut took off like a rocket, propelled by what looked like a small tornado. The two of them quickly vanished into the cityscape ahead, leaving everyone else behind. What incredible power! Yaoyorozu thought as she took off running. I need to be more creative to try to catch up with that. But how? Looking downwards, the answer struck her like a bolt of lightning. Of course! The bottoms of her tennis shoes bulged, then shredded entirely as the ponytailed girl used her quirk to create a pair of roller skates on her feet. The results spoke for themselves as Yaoyorozu quickly moved to the front of the pack, then outstripped them. I'm in 3rd place, but I've got to do better. Got to go plus ultra. Seemingly as if they knew what she was thinking and shared the same sentiment, other competitors began to give it their all in the same way. The sound of a deep breath being taken caused Yaoyorozu to look to her right, where she saw the lipless teen swimming through the ice floe left behind by the bichromatic teen as if it was actually water. Noticing her stare, the other competitor waved in a friendly manner before returning to his swimming routine. His control is very impressive, and so is his creative use of what most would find to be a hazard to avoid. I'll be surprised if he doesn't make the cut. Rounding a corner, the end of the cityscape came into view as a gate in the side of an impressive concrete wall. A pair of arms stretched past her, and to Yaoyorozu's surprise, a boy with an odd smile and what seemed to be an elastic body shot by like a rocket. A unique use of an otherwise odd mutation. To her surprise, however, the path came to a sudden stop, literally. A large artificial lake stretched out beneath them for the next 100 meters, with 2 offset rows of pillars jutting up from it for competitors to cross on. Sitting in the path, however, were 2 large windmill-like contraptions clearly meant to serve as hazards for stopping the would-be heroes. Sure enough, the elastic boy flew face-first into one of the windmills and fell into the water far below. Oops, it looks like our first contestant is out. Mike cried in overly dramatic anguish as an ectoplasm clone collected the dripping wet rubber boy. Thinking quickly, Yaoyorozu created a pogo stick from her bare midriff and used the momentum she'd already accumulated to bridge the first gap, pulling her legs up to place her feet on the pogo stick in one fell swoop. While the other competitors crossed with far greater difficulty, the ponytailed girl successfully used her pogo stick to leap across the gaps. In front of her, she noticed the 2-colored teen freeze the windmills in place, before the windy teen pursuing him blew the ice off with his whirlwind. As the sheets of ice fell, Yaoyorozu found herself dodging more hazards than she'd anticipated. A large chunk of ice struck her in mid-jump, causing her to lose her stride and sending her directly towards one of the gaps with no hope of correction. Thinking fast as she began to fall, the Ravenet created a grappling gun and shot the hook from it into the rising arm of the windmill, using the momentum from it to swing herself around half a dozen pillars and the second windmill, landing barely behind the first and second place competitors. The water hazard ended shortly thereafter, with the path now leading directly towards what looked like a forest of smaller pillars spaced fairly densely, creating a multitude of tiny passages to run through with the ever-present risk of confusing your eyes and running headlong into one of the hazards. The ice user and his windy adversary used their quirks to go over this obstacle, flying through the air or skating across a newly formed icy ceiling. Other students had no such luck, Yaoyorozu included, having to go through the maze instead. As she skated forwards, dodging left and right to avoid pillars, the Ravenet was surprised when what looked like a pair of feet went whirling through the air in front of her as if they'd been thrown. A few seconds later, a storm of flesh-colored chunks flew by her, zipping through the obstacles with impunity. Two of these were clearly hands, one dragging a pair of yoga pants behind it, while the other carried a gym jacket. Now there's an odd quirk. Zuzu would have a field day here. Off to one side, a few pillars fell to the ground, and Yaoyorozu realized this was because the ground under them had turned to mud as the ashen-haired teen with no lips swam under or through them. The pillars in front became sparser, and soon enough the ponytailed girl found herself following a long causeway across the lake, directly towards a waterfall that flowed directly over the path. The sound of rapid footsteps and engines came from behind her, then receded into the distance as the blue-haired teen ran past her at incredible speed. What looked to be small exhaust pipes stuck out from his calves. Yaoyorozu's eyes narrowed, before she started to pick up the pace. With the rest of the pack closing in behind her, and the roaring of the waterfall signifying incredible force behind the falling liquid, she'd need to breach the roaring curtain to continue the race. The engine boy had gotten through with sheer speed, while the floating chunk seemed unharmed, the lipless one sank into the concrete, and the two front-runners breached the waterfall with sheer power. That's it. Calling on her quirk again, Yaoyorozu created a vial of a clear, thick, somewhat oily liquid in her right hand and threw it towards the waterfall. Kaken, this one's for you, she thought, just as the vial shattered and the nitroglycerin within exploded, creating a powerful shockwave that counteracted the waterfall's own kinetic energy long enough for the ponytailed girl to slip through. On the other side, a massive cave opened up in front of Yaoyorozu. Several levels carved into the walls of the cavern above where she stood made the cave look somewhat like an old mine. The wheels broke off of her roller skates as she attempted to skate across the rocky floor, tripping her up for a moment. Luckily, she regained her balance and ran forward without the aid of any wheels, hoping to catch up with those in front of her. A rumble on the walls alerted her to several falling boulders tumbling from the higher levels. Thinking quickly, the Ravenet created a bazooka and took aim at the largest boulder, shooting it with an explosive round that shattered it and gave her room to dodge the smaller rocks. To her surprise, the boulder melted into what looked like plastic. Foam boulders? Why? Yaoyorozu wondered, only to be answered when a student behind her got tagged by one and was escorted away by an ectoplasm clone. Another trap for us to fall into, I see. Dashing forwards and avoiding more falling boulders, the cave opened up to reveal a long, narrow canyon infested by more clones. Thinking quickly, Yaoyorozu tossed several nesting dolls at them, which opened up to reveal flashbang grenades, melting the clones into slime. Rounding a corner, she found herself face to face with a huge rock wall, the last obstacle to surmount before the race ended. The wall appeared to be a sticking point for most of the other competitors, slowing them down drastically. The engine boy was attempting to hopscotch up the rocks on either side, which were not sheer cliffs, but disjointed inclines with large gaps. The lipless teen was nowhere in sight. The two frontrunners were long gone, as evidenced by a few chunks of quickly melting ice on the ground. Next to them, the floating chunks were launching themselves up the cliff one at a time, making exasperated noises. Yaoyorozu reached down to her belt as she continued to run forwards, grabbing her grappling gun and firing it into a tree growing at the top of the cliff. I hope this is enough, she thought, reeling herself in and reaching the top in moments. A straightaway greeted her with a finish line at the end. Yaoyorozu watched as the wind user overtook the bichromatic teen just in time to cross the line first. In the middle of the track, a patch of quicksand grew, with the ashen-haired teen surfacing from it like a fish and hopping out onto the track, opting to run the rest of the way. Yaoyorozu picked up speed as she sprinted down the track, ignoring the hunger pangs starting to show up from her quirk use. However, at the last moment, the engine-legged boy shot past her, skidding across the finish line and almost running into a wall. The Ravenet crossed the line a few moments later. As she dropped to the ground, tired out by the race and her quirk's drawbacks, the ashen-haired boy knelt down beside her. You did awesome out there, you know that, he said cheerfully. Thank you, Yaoyorozu trailed off weakly in response. The other frowned. Are you all right? He asked, concern in his voice. It's just my quirk. I just need something to eat, she responded. One moment, he responded, running into a nearby building. A few seconds later, he re-emerged with a bag of chips and a candy bar. Here you go, he said, offering the chips to her. Why, the Ravenet responded. The lipless teen smiled, not that it was easy to tell. Because that's what heroes do, isn't it? He asked. The ponytailed girl pondered this for a moment, before nodding. I guess so, she responded, digging into the bag of chips as a tornado of floating chunks rocketed by, then swirled around the yoga pants and gym jacket, reassembling themselves into a green-haired girl with sharp teeth. Nice to meet you, by the way. My name is Juzo Hananuki, what's yours? The lipless teen asked. Yaoyorozu stopped eating long enough to nod at Hananuki. Momo Yaoyorozu, nice to meet you. Yaoyorozu, eh? Well, I hope we both make it in. Hananuki stated cheerfully, turning to walk away as several other contestants staggered in. And that's all, folks. Out of the 46 original racers, only 13 of you made it through. Present Mike shouted. Feel proud, you all did great today. RRR. 1 week later, the lair, Yaoyorozu estate. Momo Yaoyorozu burst through the door of Hatsume and Midoriya's workshop, slightly soaked by the rain outside. The duo in question watched something with multiple moving parts that was probably deadly gradually slow down as the power to it was cut, while Bakugo exploded in a nearby chair. Jesus Christ, ponytail, fucking knock next time, the explosive blonde shouted in surprise, sizzling handprints still smoking on the ugly green armchair's arms. My apologies, the heiress responded. I'm just in a hurry to open this. Holding her arms in front of her, Yaoyorozu displayed an envelope for the others to look at. This is Dada Ua Crest? Midoriya asked. Either this is my acceptance letter, or my rejection letter. I wanted you all to find out with me, Yaoyorozu responded, opening the envelope and watching as a metal disc fell onto the tabletop, a glow emanating from it as a blue light projected a video in front of them. Momo Yaoyorozu, Heroics Recommendation Candidate 122, spoke a tired-looking man wearing a black jumpsuit with an unusual scarf wrapped around his neck. Due to your quick use of and talent with your quirk, you placed fourth in the practical after passing the written exam in first place. The other three were ready to cheer for Yaoyorozu's admission, but the man on the screen wasn't done. Originally, this placement would have meant you would be enrolled in Class 1B, taught by Vlad King. However, the first-place candidate declined his offer of admission after the exam, so your revised third-place finish means I shall be teaching you in Class 1A. Report to the appropriate classroom by 8 o'clock on the morning of April 8th. The projection shut off, and this time the other three really did cheer. Good job, Momo. Hatsume cheered, hugging her friend tightly. Glad you made it in, Ponytail. I wouldn't be able to crush you on my way to the top if you didn't, Bakugo said, but his prickliness wasn't nearly as genuine as his congratulatory words. You did it, Momo, Midoriya said. Now it's up to just the three of us to get into UA. Just sit tight, we'll be there right beside you. DMN right. Bakugo and Hatsume both shouted, pumping their fists in the air. Thank you, Yaoyorozu sniffled, overwhelmed by her joy and the congratulations from her best friends. RRR. The next day, Bakugo was dragged to a social event by his fashionista parents. Yaoyorozu was taken to tour one of the Yaoyorozu group's factories in Kyoto, and Hatsume insisted on working on something special all alone. As a result, Midoriya found himself walking down to the beach to clear some trash and maybe complete some projects of his own. However, as he stepped onto the patch of sand they'd first cleared at the steps, he thought he heard voices nearby. Sliding down the lens from his headband over his left eye, the greenette scanned the area and spotted two heat signatures a little ways down the beach. Indulging his curiosity, the cyborg teen crept further down the beach to see a slightly older blonde teenager carrying a refrigerator on his shoulder, supervised by All Might? Both of the blonde men on the beach whirled around and stared directly at the greenette peeking out from behind a pile of ruined appliances, who, upon realizing he'd blurted that out, simply waved sheepishly. The blue eyes of the symbol of peace widened significantly. Young Midoriya, he asked, before realizing that the boy was waving at him with his right hand. The same right hand that All Might had watched get blown off in the sludge villain incident. How they, he wondered, before realizing that the arm in question was metal. Oh? Yagi-sensei, who is this? The blonde boy next to All Might asked. The symbol of peace blinked a couple times. Oh, right. Young Togata, I would like to introduce you to one of the most heroic young men I've ever had the honor of saving, Izuku Midoriya. Young Midoriya, this is Mirio Togata, a UA High second year and my personal student. In the time it took the two men to blink, Midoriya had appeared right in front of them. Personal student? Oh my god, that's so cool. How did it happen? What's it like learning one-on-one from All Might? What's your quirk? Whoa, slow down, man. I can't answer so many questions so quickly. Togata laughed. All Might says he approached me because Sir thought he'd like me, and it's really cool learning from him. Holding an arm out in front of him, Togata passed the appendage through the refrigerator in front of him. My quirk is called permeation, and it lets me pass through anything I touch. It's taken me years to learn how to use it, and I'm still having trouble with it even right now. Still. I won't give up until I can save 1,000,000 people. Midoriya's eyes seemed to sparkle. What an awesome quirk. You can surprise attack villains to quickly neutralize them, pass through debris to locate civilians, or travel through the ground really fast, he rattled off. Togata's eyes sparkled right back. Oh my goodness, I'd never even thought about the rescue potential of my quirk. If I work at using my quirk that way, I don't just have to beat villains to save 1,000,000 people, I can pull them out myself and beat the villains. Togata then looked at his right arm, which bore 4 distinct scars. My quirk also, mutated recently, so now I also have a strength ability that happens because of how my permeation interacts with the molecules my body passes through. It broke my arm the first time I used it though, and even now I still hurt my muscles whenever I use it. The lens slid down over Midoriya's eye again. Ouch, that's some nasty scarring for your own quirk to cause. Can you regulate that power in any way? Togata grimaced. According to All Might, it seems that I can only handle around 10% of this strength mutation's kickback at my current level of strength. I've had some success meditating to hold 10% in my arm, but it's hard to maintain that concentration, especially in battle, the blonde summarized. Have you tried spreading that energy out through your body instead of just confining it in one limb? Midoriya asked. And how do you dial in that level of power through meditating? Shoot, I haven't tried spreading it out. Togata realized, before his expression turned kind of embarrassed. As for regulating it, I think of it as being like an egg in a microwave that I don't want to explode. Midoriya snorted, only to realize what he'd done and redden. I am sorry. I didn't mean to laugh, it's just an unwieldy analogy. Maybe try thinking of it like a glass of water that you're trying to keep at a certain level and prevent from overflowing, he wondered aloud. Togata closed his eyes and seemed to tense for a second. Red lines spread across his body as he clenched his jaw, but then calmed down as they slowly transformed into a thin golden aura clinging directly to his body. Midoriya, you're a genius, he exclaimed. This is exactly what I was looking for. As Midoriya glowed from the praise, and basked in the light Togata emitted, All Might stood in stunned surprise. This kid. He hadn't met young Togata more than 5 minutes ago, and he's already figured out a better way for him to use one for all than I ever could have hoped to. With any luck, I won't have to write Gran Torino like I'd feared. I owe young Midoriya my eternal gratitude for that much alone. So what about you? What's your quirk, and what are you doing at this beach? Togata asked Midoriya. The greenette looked embarrassed and shy for a moment. My friends and I have been cleaning up this beach. My friend Mei likes to make inventions out of the scrap here, and I train with my other friends Katsuki and Momo by cleaning up the beach. Only a few months to the UA entrance exams after all, he said, before lowering his voice. And I'm quirkless. Togata blinked a few times, his blue eyes widening. You're quirkless and training to be a hero? That's so cool, he exclaimed, stunning Midoriya. Is that why you have that robot arm? Oh, no, the arm happened because of an accident. So did my legs, Midoriya admitted. It was thanks to them that I could dream of being a hero again. Mei made these for me, and I think they've let me catch up with Katsuki and Momo in our hero training. Togata smiled. You've got a heart full of heroism, Midoriya, he said. Maybe I'll work alongside you someday. You have what it takes. Power? The blonde teen crossed his arms in front of him, making a somewhat silly pose as he said his catchphrase. Power? Midoriya responded, returning the gesture and causing a grin to break out on Togata's face, and All Might's as well. That's the spirit, the blonde teen cheered. All Might stepped forward and cleared his throat. Young Midoriya, I can't thank you enough for helping young Togata learn to control his quirk's new mutation, he said. You're down here often for training, right? I would like you and your friends to continue training here. It will prepare you well for the exam and help you give back to the community as a true hero should. Lowering his voice slightly, All Might leaned towards the greenette. That being said, I can't have you calling me All Might if we meet again while your friends are here. My real name is Toshinori Yagi, please call me by that instead. Midoriya blinked in surprise, stunned that he'd just been trusted with All Might's real name. I won't let you down, Yagi-san. The tall blonde grinned and transformed into his muscle form. Now that's the spirit, young Midoriya. You already have that plus ultra attitude going for you. Izuku Midoriya went home that night having made a new friend and gained the approval and gratitude of his idol. Needless to say, he slept very well that night. From then on, the days and weeks turned into months, moving closer to the entrance exams as Midoriya and his friends cleaned the beach. The morning of February 26, 21XX, Mizudafu, Japan. Are you sure you have everything? Inko Midoriya asked her son. Extra water, spare fuel cells, a handkerchief, something to eat and an extra handkerchief? The younger Midoriya laughed softly. I'll be fine, Mom, he said. Mei-chan, Kaken and I are going to get into UA. Just watch us. I'll hold you to that, son. Hisashi Midoriya's voice spoke from the tablet computer nearby, the man in the middle of his lunch break at Island, 5 time zones ahead of Mizudafu, on a video call to see his son off. You've grown up so well, Izuku. Make us proud. I will, the cybernetic teen responded, hugging his mother and turning to walk out the door. Out on the street, the greenette turned just in time to see his explosive friend running towards him like a maniac. Oi, Zuzu! Bakugo shouted, a grin on his face. Are you ready to take second place? In your dreams, Kaken. Midoriya laughed back. The two engaged in a staring contest before being interrupted by someone clasping their hands on each shoulder gently. Now, is this really necessary? Yaoyorozu asked calmly. The Ravenet had been invited to, alongside the other recommendation students, view the general admissions practical alongside the heroics teachers, so she had opted to travel to UA with her friends. I guess not, Midoriya admitted sheepishly. Whatever, ponytail. Bakugo grumbled. After walking a few blocks closer to UA, a flash of pink signaled Hatsume intercepting the trio. Good morning, test subjects, the pinkette said cheerfully. Are you ready to win this thing? The other 3 stopped shivering a few moments after being referred to as test subjects. Midoriya and Bakugo both nodded in agreement as the group continued towards their destination. Upon arriving at the gate to UA, the 4 teenagers stared up at the giant building in front of them. Wow, Midoriya murmured in awe. So this is where all the best heroes went, Bakugo added. Impressive, Hatsume breathed out. Quite a sight, isn't it? Yaoyorozu agreed. The quartet stepped forward all at once, only for Midoriya to trip over a loose paving stone and start falling towards the ground. The greenette prepared to stop himself, but his momentum downwards suddenly ceased. Sorry about using my quirk on you, a voice said behind them. A brunette girl with round cheeks stood behind them, touching her fingers together. Midoriya felt his mass return to him and quickly got back up. I just thought it'd be a bad omen to trip before the exam. Don't worry about it. Thanks for saving the nerds, but Bakugo said. Midoriya reached forward and raised one metal finger in response, earning a snort of laughter from the blonde. Yaoyorozu blushed slightly at the vulgar gesture, while Hatsume merely snickered. Thank you, Midoriya responded. Good luck in the exam. Oh, thank you too, the girl responded, waving and walking towards the main building. This is where we part ways, Yaoyorozu said, turning to her friends. While you are all grinding your brains and bodies to the bone, I'm going to spend the next hour and a half in the cafeteria. An evil grin crossed the ponytailed girl's face before she skipped away from her stunned friends. Did she just? Midoriya asked. Totally diss all of us? Yep, Hatsume answered. FING recommendation. Students, Bakugo growled. RRR. After the written exam's conclusion and a 2-hour break for grading. Heyo little listeners, a voice boomed in a huge auditorium. The voice hero, Present Mike, stood at the podium on the stage. If you're here, IT means you passed the written exam, so now it's up to me, Present MIC, to show you the ropes for the practical. Say, hey, if you can hear me. The entire room remained silent, and the blonde pro sweat dropped. Kids these days are so intense. No wonder Nizu foisted this off on me, he thought to himself, gathering his train of thought and clearing his throat. Anyway, today you'll be conducting mock battles in super hip cityscapes. Turn your cards over and you'll see which training ground you're assigned to. Up in the seating area, Midoriya and Bakugo flipped their cards over and examined them. Bakugo was assigned to Training Ground D, while Midoriya was assigned to Training Ground B. Looks like I can't crush you directly, nerd, Bakugo muttered. More like you won't have to play second fiddle to my performance, Kaken, the greenette snarked back. You'll face 3 types of mock baddies worth 1, 2, and 3 points depending on their strength. Excuse me, a voice called from higher up in the room. A glasses-wearing teen, unbeknownst to the 2 friends, this was the same one who appeared at the recommendation exam alongside Yaoyorozu, stood up, his hand raised as a spotlight shined on him. Without waiting for Mick's acknowledgement, the blue-haired boy launched into a lengthy series of interjections. The handout shows 4 types of villains, yet you mentioned only 3. If this is an error on official UA materials, it is a disgrace to this institution. Then, the teen turned his ire elsewhere. And you too, he stated, pointing at Bakugo and Midoriya. All you two have done is chatter amongst yourselves, distracting other contestants. You should not be here if you cannot take this exam seriously. Midoriya impassively raised an eyebrow, while Bakugo casually flipped the teen off. Before he could respond, however, Mike cut him off. Thanks for that question, applicant 7111, the pro called out. That one is an arena trap to avoid fighting, it'll go berserk in tight spaces, so just stay out of its way, it's worth 0 points anyway. The glasses-wearing teen bowed and sat back down. Now, let's leave off here with the school motto. You'd better be ready to go beyond. Mike began. Plus Ultra, the voice hero shouted, joined only by Midoriya. I like your style, applicant 3568. Good luck, everyone. Outside the auditorium, Bakugo and Midoriya were met by Hatsume. My work here is done, the inventor announced cheerfully. Power Loader was impressed and scared by the EMP capture device I built from a toaster and a microwave for my exam. That's good, Mei-chan, Midoriya responded, looking down at his right hand. Noticing this, Bakugo stated his piece. You sure you won't be given any trouble for those, Zuzu, he asked. Midoriya nodded. I've already cleared it with the Board of Admissions and asked Ectoplasm Sensei, the Greenette responded. They all said I could bring my prosthetic legs, a prosthetic arm, a spare arm and the arm guard for my left arm. I trust you won't be taking Maker 1 into battle? Hatsume asked. The cyborg shook his head. Maker 1 is strong, but I need both strong and versatile. I'm using Incinerator and Shock Value for this 1-inch, Midoriya stated, looking at the backpack he wore and thinking of the contents within. You'll do great then, Bakugo said. That being said, I'm still winning this. Oh yeah, Kaken? Midoriya challenged. We'll see who comes in first place then. Bring it. If I win, you'll have to do my workout routine for a day. Bakugo wagered with his friend. Oh, it's on. If I win, you'll have to come up with an invention that's actually worth something. Midoriya retorted. As the two solemnly shook hands, Hatsume cleared her throat. If you two are done with your gentleman's wager now, I need Zuzu to know that he has to do his best. I told Power Loader to watch you specifically as a practical example of my work, the Pinkette Sign-Song, before skipping away. Oh dear, Midoriya said, the pressure of Hatsume's expectations on him now. It's your funeral, Zuzu. Try not to lose too badly, Bakugo chuckled, walking towards one of the locker rooms. RRR. As his shuttle bus ferried him and the other examinees towards Training Ground B, the green-haired cyborg surveyed the other students on the bus, idly analyzing their mutations inside his head. Mantis-like mutations, but that may not imply what his quirk is. I'll bet it has something to do with blades though, unless he can turn into a more insectoid form at will. Most of the bus couldn't hear his muttering over their chatter, their internal panic, or the music they were listening to in order to calm down. The exception to this, however, tapped him on the shoulder. Midoriya turned around in his seat and immediately grimaced, as he was staring into the stern face of the same glasses-wearing teen who had reprimanded him earlier. Looking down, Midoriya noticed long pipes sticking out of the other's legs. An engine mutation? I wonder if he's an Ida. Can I help you? The Greenette asked. The other applicant spoke up. You're being rather distracting with your mumbling. Are you a plant by UA to get us to slip up? Midoriya blanched. Oh no, I'm sorry, I thought I was finally getting that habit under control, he said in embarrassment. And no, I don't work for UA. Still, it wouldn't be surprising if they did employ people to pose as applicants in order to add pressure in the exam. That's honestly brilliant. Looking down at the pipes on his legs again, Midoriya looked the other teen in the eye. Are you a member of the Ida family? Those pipes in your legs remind me of the ones in Cambio's back and Ingenium's arms. The other teen coughed in surprise. You're very astute. My name is Tenya Ida, I'm the youngest son of the Ida family, he said, introducing himself. Looking down at Midoriya, the Bluinette's eyes widened. Good heavens, what happened to your arm? Midoriya pondered his right arm, currently just an empty stump, since he'd left Maker 1 back in his locker with his regular clothes. The cybernetic teen had changed into a pair of jeans and a dark gray tank top, rather unorthodox exercise clothing, but Midoriya thought it would suffice. His left arm was equipped with a defensive gauntlet with no special abilities other than durability enhancement and shock absorption, properties of the special alloy it was created from. Hatsume had theorized about the possibilities of creating with it for years, but until she met Yaoyorozu, it was unfeasible to make. It still cost a lot of calories for the heiress to create though. Most of the world's supply of the so-called Hatsume metal had been used to create the gauntlet, while all the prosthetics were steel or titanium. I keep forgetting that this freaks people out, he laughed slightly, reaching down to his belt and grabbing what looked like a large canister with blue metal highlights on it. Slotting it onto the adapter where his elbow once was, the greenette held the arm up for Ida to watch as it opened up and unfolded into a blue and silver mechanical hand with golden metallic fingers. Izuku Midoriya at your service, nice to meet you, Ida-san. Let's both do our best in this exam, the cybernetic teen said, smiling at his new acquaintance. Ida blinked a few times. I trust you filed all the proper paperwork for this support equipment, Midoriya-san, and that it is truly necessary for your quirk, he asked. Midoriya grimaced. I don't actually have a quirk, he said, causing Ida to pale significantly. I would have been wheelchair-bound after a villain attack on my 7th birthday if it wasn't for the fact that one of my friends is a genius inventor who created prosthetics that not only gave me back my mobility, but also my dreams of heroism. They're very necessary. After a few moments of silence, the glasses wearer started to applaud. I salute you, Izuku Midoriya, your tenacity and drive clearly knows no bounds. I hope we both can pass this exam, Ida said, with respect in his voice. Thank you, Ida-san. Good luck in the exam as well, Midoriya responded as the bus stopped and both teens rose to step out of the bus. Spotting the round-faced brunette who stopped his fall earlier, Midoriya walked over to her. Thank you again for preventing me from falling earlier, he said, startling her slightly. Oh, it's you, the robot boy, she responded. Midoriya chuckled at this. You're not too far off, I'm a cyborg though, not a robot, he explained. Oh, my bad, the girl giggled. Nice to meet you, I'm Ochako Uraraka. Izuku Midoriya, I hope you do well in the exam, Uraraka-san, the cyborg responded, looking towards the gate. I can see the gates starting to open. It looks like we're about to start. Thanks, you too. Uraraka began, before everyone's train of thought was cut off by Mick's shout. Go! There's no countdowns in reality. While most of the applicants remained in stunned silence for a few moments, Midoriya engaged his leg servos and shot forwards, running as fast as he could. Just before he could make it through the gate, Ida passed him, now running his engines to hunt down robots. The two contestants nodded at each other, reaching the first intersection and turning in two different directions. The lens on his headband slid down to cover the greenette's left eye, scanning for electrical signatures. There, on my left. Midoriya thought, rounding a corner and coming face to face with one of the one-point bots crashing through a storefront and turning on its lone wheel. Target acquired. Eliminating. Before the one-pointer could make good on its threat, however, the cyborg dashed straight up to it and, his fist crackling with faint hints of electricity, plunged the appendage through the robot's eye, ripping out its internal circuitry as the machine died in front of him. 1 point. I think I need 30 to be safe, and 40 to know for sure. Rounding another corner, the teenaged cyborg spotted a blonde kid who seemed to sparkle in the light. He'd just dispatched a three-pointer with 2 shots from what appeared to be a laser emitted from an odd belt on his midriff, but a 2-pointer was rapidly sneaking up on him and he appeared to be having some kind of stomach cramp. Watch out! Midoriya shouted, activating one of the secondary features present in all of Hatsume's hero makers, a grappling line that shot out of the palm of his hand, wrapping around the robot's head. Giving a great heave with shock value's other secondary function, super strength, the greenette yanked the scorpion-like robot high into the air, then leapt towards it as his arm unfurled into a more combat-oriented firing mode. The second he made contact with the bot, a hand-shaped electrical blast completely fried the machine. The teenaged cyborg landed next to the blonde and nodded at him. Are you alright? Regaining his bowel control, the blonde nodded. Thank you, Mon Amy, you have a fabulous sparkle to you. A small smile crossed Midoriya's face. Merci beaucoup, the greenette responded, the blonde's eyes widened slightly in response. I see you are a man of culture as well. I hope to see you again when the school year begins, he said, turning to run off. Likewise. Midoriya shouted, shooting his grappling hook into an antenna atop a nearby building and reeling himself up 4 stories to get a better vantage point. From there, he spotted a large central square where a lot of robots were being wrecked, a few back alleyways where some enemies clearly lay in wait to surprise applicants, and a multi-armed teen on a nearby rooftop, growing ears from his arms. The greenette waved to the other boy, who waved back after a moment of hesitation. Spotting a nearby alleyway containing at least 1 3-pointer, the cyborg decided his target, leaping across several rooftops and then plummeting downwards into the alleyway towards his quarry. Detecting him, the 3-pointer angled its missile launchers upwards, but it was too late to avoid being drop-kicked through the head. 6 points, Midoriya muttered, whirling around in time to duck the rubber bullets of a 1-pointer, before shooting a blast of electricity that fried its circuits. A whirring sound alerted him to another active three-pointer entering the alley, attracted by the commotion, prompting Midoriya to unfold shock value into its firing mode again. Going for 10 now. RRR. Thank you, recommended students, for joining us in this viewing today, Principal Nizu spoke, sitting in his chair alongside the other faculty members. While all 4 students, Yaoyorozu, Tokage, Hananuki and Todoroki, noticed the skinny blonde man sitting in one of the chairs, none of them commented on him, not even Yaoyorozu, who had met him and his disciple once during a Dagoba Beach training sessions. As you can see, there are many traits that make a great hero, the animalistic hero continued, gesturing to a screen displaying the multi-armed teen. The forethought to determine an objective's location. Gesturing to the blonde Frenchman's screen. The ability to keep a cool head under pressure. Mobility that proves crucial in any circumstance, the principal continued, pointing out Ida. Pure combat ability, this time, the screen in question showed Bakugo standing in the ruined remains of a three-pointer. Yaoyorozu nodded approvingly. And perhaps most crucially, the willingness to protect others and expect nothing in return, Nizu finished, gesturing to footage of Midoriya eliminating the two-pointer that threatened Aoyama. The best heroes combine all of these traits in perfect proportion to each other. Tokage and Hananuki nodded in agreement with this sentiment, while Todoroki remained cold and aloof. Yaoyorozu was beaming internally. Kaken and Zuzu are doing incredibly well in this exam. If they can keep this pace up for another 7 minutes, they'll be shoo-ins. The true test has yet to come, however, the skinny blonde teacher said, gesturing to a button labeled Kaiju Switch. Turning to the excavation hero, Power Loader, the blonde spoke up again. 5 more minutes, Maijima? 5 more minutes, the other man affirmed. RRR. Rartorg. Midoriya shouted, unleashing an enormous blast of electricity down a side street, frying a squadron of 4 two-pointers. That's 18. A beeping noise alerted him to his prosthetic arm's condition. The glowing lines on shock value dimmed and slowly died out, before the arm automatically folded back up into a canister-like state. "Ah man, I used up all its batteries," he complained, removing the inert prosthetic and replacing it with a black canister with red lines from his left hip. The new canister unfolded into an arm made from dark gray, almost black metal with 4 glowing orange lines that resembled tubes running down its sides and a hole in the palm. "Looks like I have to use the incinerator arm from here," he said, turning onto a larger street and being greeted by 5 one-pointers. The first bot rushed him, only to be firmly grabbed by its neck and have its head torn off, what appeared to be a spine-like structure coming with it. 19. Leaping off its corpse, the teen used the first one as leverage to attack the second, crushing its head with an axe kick. 20. The third attempted to surprise him from the left, but the shock-absorbent Hatsume gauntlet stopped the blow short and repelled it, much to Midoriya's surprise, leaving the bot's guard open for the cyborg to punch straight through its chest. 21. Tearing the third one's shield-like right arm off, the greenette used the edge of the shield to cleave the fourth one in half where its arms met its body. 22. The last one was bashed in the face with the shield, then had its head torn off in the same manner as the first. 23. Midoriya noted, using its corpse as a platform to leap into the air from, using the grappling hook in Incinerator to reel himself to the top of a water tower. Looking down into an intersection below, the cyborg saw Ida disassembling a three-pointer with rapid-fire kicks, not noticing the squad of 3 two-pointers speeding towards him from behind. "I've got to stop them," Midoriya thought to himself, the tubes on his arm glowing as he took aim at the villain bots. Incinerate. A blast of heat behind him surprised Ida, causing him to whirl around in time to watch a bolt of plasma melt a squadron of two-pointers sneaking up on him into slag. Looking towards the roof of a nearby building, he spotted Midoriya atop the water tower, seemingly cold, emotionless and willing to destroy at a moment's notice. The sight sent a chill up his spine, before Midoriya dropped to the street. "Are you all right, Ida-san?" the greenette asked, and the feeling of fear dispelled in an instant. "I am, Midoriya-san. Thank you for your assistance," the bluinette proclaimed in a stiff manner, before spotting a one-pointer creeping up on Midoriya. "Behind you," he shouted, launching forward at the same time Midoriya did. The two passed each other, Ida delivering a powerful kick that destroyed the villain bot. Turning around, the bespectacled teen saw Midoriya rip the head off of another two-pointer that had tried to sneak up on Ida. 31, the greenette said, before jumping backwards over Ida's head and landing in a one-armed handstand on a three-pointer that had disguised itself among the wrecked bots. Incinerate. The blast of plasma melted a hole roughly half a meter in diameter all the way through the villain bot's steel body, while Midoriya whirled around to fire one last bolt of plasma at a one-pointer emerging from an alleyway. 36. Just before Ida could thank Midoriya again, the ground began to shake and an enormous dust cloud exploded on the other side of a large plaza. The dust cleared to reveal an enormous robot riding on a tank-like base, peering down at them from above the rooftops. A large number 0 was painted on its body. Where the hell do they get the funding for stuff like this? Midoriya wondered aloud, staring upwards as a horde of other students began to book it right past him and Ida, as far as they could from the 0-pointer. The greenette was also turning to run, when a cry of pain alerted him to trouble. RRR. Meanwhile, up in the control room, Toshinori Yagi spotted trouble in Training Ground B. There's a girl trapped directly in the 0-pointer's path, he said, alarm present in his voice. Nizu grimaced. Then shut it down. Maijima-san, he asked, turning to Power Loader. However, the orange-haired teacher was furiously typing on his tablet. Maijima-san? I can't shut it down. It won't let me, the panicking support teacher said, holding the tablet up for all to see. The screen was nothing but white static, except for the stylized black X in the middle. Oh no, Yaoyorozu thought, recognizing that symbol as the same one on the G2 robot piece from several years earlier. I need to go dash. Yagi began, but Nizu cut him off. Wait, look there. RRR. Spotting Uraraka trapped under fallen concrete debris, likely with a broken ankle, Midoriya knew he had to act immediately and do something really stupid that all three of his friends would berate him for later. Taking aim directly at the 0-pointer's face as it began to raise its right fist, the greenette fired his grappling hook upwards and speared the mechanical monster directly through one of its optical sensors. With a jet-boosted jump from his leg prosthetics, the teenage cyborg rocketed upwards and planted his fist firmly in the face of the giant robot. It's not enough. I need to draw out more power. Midoriya thought, recalling something Hatsume had told him about, a special feature built into every hero maker after Maker 1. Gripping the unlocking mechanism where his prosthetic met his original arm, the greenette shouted at the top of his lungs. Code, Midoriya 129. Bringing his legs up as the tubes on the incinerator arm began to glow brighter than before, the cyborg unlocked his arm and leapt backwards into the air, away from the beeping, glowing prosthetic he left lodged in the 0-pointer's face. The beeping grew more intense as the tubes glowed brighter and brighter. Full break. The entire face of the 0-pointer exploded as the hero maker fulfilled its final purpose, detonating in a magnificent fireball and throwing the enormous mech backwards and away from the applicants. In the viewing room, several teachers all breathed a sigh of relief. As he fell backwards, Midoriya curled into a ball in order to regain his balance, hoping to land safely without destroying Hatsume's leg modules. To his surprise, however, his downward momentum halted barely 3 meters off the ground as Uraraka slapped his shoulder, activating her quirk on him from atop a floating robot piece. The duo descended slowly to the ground, and Uraraka immediately threw up everything in her stomach. Time's up! Mike called as Midoriya wiped his brow in relief. Thank you, Uraraka-san, he said, before looking back at the fallen corpse of the 0-pointer. DMN, Mei-chan is going to kill me for this. RRR. 2 weeks later, the lair, Yaoyorozu estate, Muzutafu. So am I going first, Kaken, or are you? Midoriya asked. I'm going first obviously. Bakugo retorted, reaching for the envelope addressed to him on the table. Before he could open it, however, Hatsume shoved him out of the way. I'm the only support course student, so I should go first. Midoriya and Bakugo shot each other a glance, both shrugged, and promptly acquiesced. Hatsume tore open the envelope, and a small metal disc fell out, projecting a video of Power Loader above the table. May Hatsume, support applicant 8200, you scored in the top 10 on the written exam across all courses, which made you eligible to take the practical exam for support. You showed great ingenuity in your invention of an electromagnetic capture device for robotic enemies, which you created by cannibalizing a microwave, an electric toaster and a TV remote, the excavation hero stated. This alone was impressive, but when combined with the practical performance your inventions demonstrated in the hands of heroics applicant 3568, you earned an unprecedented 125 out of 100 on the practical exam. I hope to see you bright and early in room 1H at 8 o'clock in the morning of April 8th. Welcome to UA High. The projection shut off and Hatsume was immediately tackled in a hug by Midoriya. Good job, Mei-chan, I knew you could do it, the greenette cheered. Yaoyorozu and Bakugo also offered their congratulations, which culminated in Hatsume breaking down crying happy tears for the first time any of them could recall. I'm going next, Bakugo said, opening his envelope before Midoriya could protest. The holographic projector revealed. All Might? Greetings, young Bakugo. I am here to deliver your exam results as the latest addition to UA's faculty. The symbol of peace boomed, wearing a horrifically bad yellow pinstripe suit. A hand reached on screen, gesturing at All Might. Yes, I'm showboating. Wait, I have to do that many of these things? A hero's work is never done. Returning to the topic at hand, All Might continued. Anyway, young Bakugo, your written exam was impressive. You placed in the top 15, which made you more than eligible to take the practical exam. In the practical, you earned 80 villain points, which alone puts you far above the rest. Naturally, Bakugo said, pride in his voice. However, there was another system, rescue points. With the 18 rescue points you earned by protecting fellow applicants from surprise attacks and falling debris, you hold a total of 98 points, the highest score seen since Best Jeanist's first place finish 21 years ago. All Might finished, stunning the explosive blonde even more. Young Bakugo. Welcome to your Hero Academia. Please report to room 1A at 8 a.m. on April 8th. The projection shut off, leaving the room in silence for a few moments before Bakugo shouted yes at the top of his lungs, setting off cheering from the other three as Midoriya and Hatsume hoisted him on their shoulders in celebration. You did it, Kakin. Midoriya shouted, which caught Bakugo's attention and caused an evil grin to cross his face. Oh, right Zuzu, since I placed first, you know what that means. Midoriya sighed. Yeah, I have to do your workout regimen for a day, whatever. It'll be good for me anyway. Letting the explosive blonde down, Midoriya opened his envelope. Alright, moment of truth, he muttered, as the disc clattered to the tabletop and shined its light upwards. I am here as a projection. Once again, All Might graced the room with his visage and booming voice. Young Midoriya, you scored in the top 10 on the written exam, which made you eligible to take the practical exam. Now, in the practical, you only defeated 36 points worth of villains, although your strength and accuracy in doing so impressed all the judges. Still, that wouldn't ordinarily be enough for admissions. Midoriya sked in a deep breath. If it wasn't for our rescue point system, how could UA reject an applicant who intentionally acted to defend other applicants, even disregarding your feat of strength and heroic spirit regarding the zero-pointer? All Might finished his lead-up. With 60 rescue points, your final tally comes out to 96 points, putting you easily at a competitive second place. Young Midoriya, welcome to your Hero Academia. Please make your way to room 1A by 8 a.m. on April 8th. The scoreboard for the top 10 appeared in the projection as follows. Katsuki Bakugo, 80 villain, 18 rescue, 98 total. Izuku Midoriya, 36 villain, 60 rescue, 96 total. Ochako Uraraka, 30 villain, 45 rescue, 75 total. Eijiro Kirishima, 35 villain, 39 rescue, 74 total. Ibara Shiozaki, 40 villain, 32 rescue, 72 total. Tenya Ida, 52 villain, 18 rescue, 68 total. Itsuka Kendo, 27 villain, 40 rescue, 67 total. Fumikage Tokoyami, 50 villain, 12 rescue, 62 total. Tetsu, 50 villain, 10 rescue, 60 total. Yosetsu Aways, 51 villain, 7 rescue, 58 total. Midoriya was immediately beset by his friends. You made it in, Zuzu. You and my babies have made me proud. Hatsume cheered. It seems you, I and Kakin are all in Class 1A. May our journey into heroics together be fruitful. Yaoyorozu added. Bakugo grinned. Looks like I can still crush you after all, nerd, he chuckled, grabbing Midoriya in an affectionate headlock and ruffling his hair. For his part, Midoriya was still processing everything. I actually did it? My dream is going to come true. Finally, a grin split his face. We really did it. Now, let's see who becomes number 1, he shouted, the other three cheering at his declaration.
Okay, sadly the chapter is over, and if you enjoyed the video just leave a like, and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.